Hi everyone, welcome to CAT 22 Slot 2 video solutions of all the sections from IMS. This is Amit Panchmatia and I will be talking about my experience of the Slot 2 because I took the CAT in Slot 2. So I will be talking about LRDI and Quant, the two areas which I would consider myself an expert at. I will be talking about those two sections and my experience at what happened with each question and give you a video solution for each and every question in Slot 2. This video will definitely help the CAT 22 students understand what errors they made in the questions and maybe help them in some other exams and they don't make similar errors, and obviously will help the other students aiming towards CAT in CAT 23 or any other year to understand how to look at the CAT paper and which questions should be attempted and which questions can be left alone. So it will definitely be a boost for even if you're writing CAT 23 or preparing for any other exams, any other similar exams.
Now this paragraph is actually pretty easy to understand. In fact, the rest of the passage is also not very difficult. So let's get started. It talks about how we teach engineering students today. It's saying that when we teach engineering problems now, we focus on certain technical ideas. So whenever you have to solve or design for something, you focus on things like cost, speed to build, ability to scale, and so on. In teaching this way, it is assumed that we need to make objective decisions, and engineering students are supposed to base these decisions grounded in math and science. But there is also the assumption that there is something called technical social dualism. In other words, engineering students are taught to believe that the technical aspect and the social aspect of any engineering problem is separate, that they are not really a combination. We can think only about the technical aspects and let go of the social aspects. So, all in all, the topic here seems to be the technical social dualism, although as we read the passage further, this is not really what the author is talking about. He talks more about the fact that we need to incorporate societal needs into our engineering curriculum. But for now, since we have only read the first paragraph, let's stick to this. And the argument is simply an explanation of what this dualism is. So the way we teach engineering students focuses on solutions that conform to technical ideals, while assuming that the social dimension of the engineering problem is a separate entity. We need not think about it right now. Paragraph 2 says that non-technical parameters such as access to a technology, cultural relevancy, or potential harms are deemed political and invalid in this way of learning. In other words, those are not really things that engineering students are supposed to worry about in designing something. But then the author points out that these technical ideals are not objective parameters. These are also social and political choices. And these choices are made to benefit the privileged segments of society. So let's think about something very popular nowadays. For example, we might take the phones that we have designed, or perhaps a robot, or something that helps with household work. In designing these products, most of the creators would probably have thought about whether the product will work, whether the cost is something that the consumer is going to be able to afford, and things like that. They may not really have thought about whom is this product going to serve. Is this going to benefit society as a whole? Is it going to disadvantage certain sections of society? So concerns like those are normally not incorporated when designing solutions to engineering problems. Now here the author is trying to say that by choosing to downplay public welfare as a critical parameter, we risk creating a culture of disengagement from societal concerns. And this is not really a good thing because this goes against the ethics of engineering. So as an engineer, you are supposed to worry about whether your creation is good or bad for society. You are supposed to think about what is going to be the social impact of whatever you're creating. But currently the engineering curriculum doesn't do that. So let's sum up the argument here. We're simply trying to say that technical ideals are actually social and political choices that are designed to benefit or that tend to benefit certain privileged sections of society, and downplaying public welfare is actually against the ethics of engineering. Paragraph 3 and 4 have been combined because both of them are giving examples to illustrate a single point. Let's look at paragraph 3 first. Now here we're saying most FDA approved drugs are incorrectly dosed for people assigned female at birth. So females are not given the right dosages. Why does that happen? This is because they have been inadequately represented in clinical trials. So for example, if a clinical trial does not include enough female candidates, then the conclusions or the results of that study might be biased in favor of men. That is what paragraph 3 is highlighting. Paragraph 4 again talks about the fact that subjective beliefs treated as facts by decision-making roles can encode social inequities. So there are certain assumptions that are made by decision makers. A lot of times these assumptions are not the correct ones, they're not facts, but they are treated as facts. And because of these prejudices or flawed assumptions that the decision makers make, there is some negative consequence. And then it explains that by means of an example. It says that there is something called a spirometer. It's okay if you don't know what it is. It is a device to measure lung capacity. Now, it was assumed when this device was being designed that Black and Asian individuals have smaller lung capacity. Now, to a lot of us, this might seem like an objective fact, but what the author here is pointing out is that these racial-based adjustments are derived from research done by eugenicists who thought that racial differences are biologically determined. So, what is it really that this means? Just because you belong to a particular race does not mean that your body is going to be the same way as other people of your race. Just because you're Asian, you're not going to be the same as all Asians. But the researchers who did this research assumed that racial differences were biologically determined, and therefore it has to be that way. These machines, for example spirometers, they ignore the influence of social and environmental factors on lung capacity. So in a lot of our minds also, we have certain stereotypes that we assign to certain races. So for example, let's think about any race, let's say Asians. To us, Asians represent a particular type of people. We assume that they look a particular way, that they might have a particular skin color. It may not necessarily be true, because it is not just race that determines the physical capacity or parameters, it is also the society and the environment you grew up in. Now, that is what this is trying to highlight, that if you design something without looking at the social dimension, that creation might be unfair to certain segments of society. It may actually create negative consequences for certain segments of society. So that's the argument we need to sum up here. Both paragraphs 3 and 4 talk about the field of medicine. So in general, in the field of medicine, ignoring the social dimensions of a drug or a medicine can lead to some negative consequences for certain groups of people, usually the ones who are marginalized or the disadvantaged ones. Paragraph 5 says that many technologies for systemically marginalized people have not been built because they were not deemed important enough. For example, something to diagnose and treat a disease like endometriosis. This afflicts 10% of people with uteruses. So it actually affects a pretty small section of the population. Since it affects only 10% of the people with uteruses, which means of course women and girls, it was deemed not important. Now, the author is saying that on the other hand, we hardly question whether devices are built sustainably, which has led to a crisis of medical waste and healthcare accounting for a lot of the greenhouse emissions. So this is a separate point. The highlight of this particular paragraph simply is that many technologies for marginalized people are simply not built because it's not considered that important. And why does this happen? Because in trying to create technology, in trying to solve an engineering problem, we don't think of the societal consequences at all. Paragraph 6 and 7, similar point, and therefore they've been clubbed together. Both of them talk about the engineering curriculum or pedagogy. So here we are saying that social justice must be made core to the way engineers are trained. Some universities are already working on this. Paragraph 7 is actually giving examples of courses that have been designed in order to achieve these goals. If you look at the last sentence in paragraph 7, it says something similar. When we design and build with equity and justice in mind, we craft better solutions that respond to complexities of systemic problems. So, when social justice is integrated into the engineering curriculum, an engineer is more likely to be aware of systemic problems in society, and the solutions that they come up with are likely to be better. Instead of further entrenching or deepening social inequality, it might actually pave the way for flattening that inequality. Again, not to go too deep into it, we have to look at the big picture. All that we are really trying to say here is that social justice should be a part of the engineering curriculum so that engineers can come up with better solutions to systemic problems. Now, let's do a passage recap and then we will move on to the questions. So in the first paragraph, we talked about something called the technical social dualism or the social technical dualism. And we said that the way that we teach engineering problems right now focuses on the solutions that align with technical ideas. But we assume that the social dimension of the engineering problem is a separate thing. This is what the dualism refers to. After that, we said that technical ideals, in fact, are not objective criteria. They are also social and political choices that tend to benefit privileged sections of society, the wealthy, the powerful, and so on. And downplaying public welfare is actually against the ethics of engineering. So engineering is actually supposed to benefit society. So if we do not worry about societal concerns, then how will we create things that are actually good for society? The next point was that in the field of medicine, ignoring the social dimension of a particular drug or a machine can actually create negative consequences for certain groups of people. We talked about how a particular drug dosage is not really effective or is not the right one for females. Then we also talked about the spirometer, which is based on wrong assumption for certain races. After that, we said that many technologies for the marginalized people, people who are not considered as important, are simply not built because these people are not considered important enough. So that technology is not considered important enough. And then we said that social justice should actually form a part of the engineering curriculum so that engineers can come up with better solutions to problems of society. So what is the main idea for this passage? All in all, we're saying that instead of embedding societal needs into the engineering curriculum, the students are actually taught to focus on objective solutions that align with technical ideals, while the social dimension of these engineering problems is not given that much importance. The first question here I thought was not that difficult. The author gives all of the following reasons for why marginalized people are systematically discriminated against in technology related interventions except. So we need to look for an option that does not talk about systematic discrimination. Now here I do want to highlight a very small nuance. There is a difference between the word systemic and systematic. In the passage they use the word systemic, but here it's using systematic. So I'm going to assume that they're actually referring to the same thing, but in reality those are two different words. Let's take a look at the first option. So when I read this option seems to be focused more on the environmental concerns and not so much on systematic discrimination against certain groups of people. The sentence before this does talk about discrimination, but this particular sentence does not. So since it is an except question, we should retain option 1. Let's move on to option 2. But those technical ideals are at their core social and political choices that benefit the most privileged sections of society. This clearly shows that certain people in society derive benefits whereas others do not. So whenever we decide that our technology needs to conform to these parameters, the parameters that we select are not objective. They are usually designed to benefit the powerful and the rich people in society while ignoring the people who are not really the privileged ones. So 2 clearly is an example of discrimination, which is why it cannot be our answer. So we eliminate option 2. Option 3 says these racially based adjustments are derived from research done by people who thought that the racial differences are biologically determined and considered non-white people as inferior. There is really not much thought that needs to go here. Clearly, this talks about discrimination of the racial kind. So option 3 should be eliminated. We're looking for an exception. Option 4 says beyond physical failings, subjective beliefs treated as facts by those in decision-making roles can encode social inequities. To simplify this sentence, what it's trying to say is that when decision makers make certain assumptions and believe them to be true, it might further deepen social inequality. So when we say social inequity or social inequality, we are referring to discrimination against certain types of people. So option 4 cannot be our answer. The only one that does not refer to systematic discrimination is option 1, which is concerned about the consequences for the environment rather than the people directly. So option 1 becomes our answer. Let's take a look at this particular question. In this passage, the author is making the claim that. Now, when it says claim, it could be the main idea, but it could also be a more specific claim or it could be a supporting point. We don't really know. But when I look at the question, I do want to be clear on the main idea, which we have already highlighted. So let's bring it back. Instead of embedding societal needs into the pedagogy, engineering students are taught to focus on objective solutions that align with technical ideals. So the passage is concerned with the deficiencies of the engineering curriculum right now, which is mostly about the technical social dualism, and is also kind of giving suggestions about what the engineering curriculum should be, that it should actually pay attention to societal needs. Now, option 1 says, the objective of best solutions in engineering has shifted the focus of pedagogy from humanism and social obligations to technological perfection. Now, this is kind of the opposite of what the author is trying to say. The objective of the best solutions in engineering cannot really be aligned to technological perfection. It should actually be focused on humanism and social obligations. So option 1 should be eliminated. It is the opposite of what the author believes. Now let's look at option 2. Engineering students today are trained to be non-subjective in their reasoning. Having read half of this option, I can be pretty sure that this is not the answer, because engineering students today, according to the passage as well as our shadow answer, are actually trained to focus on technical ideals. They believe that they are being objective. They are trained to be objective. Now let's read the second half. As this best enables them to develop much needed universal solutions. In fact, the passage says that because they are focused on technical ideals, they are not able to come up with universal solutions. These solutions that they come up with are designed to benefit the privileged people in society. So option 2 is definitely not a claim that the author is making. We should eliminate it. Option 3 says that engineering students are taught to focus on objective technical outcomes. This part is true, independent of the social dimensions of their work. This is exactly what has been stated in the first paragraph, and it is also part of our shadow answer. So this is a claim that the author in fact is making, so we keep it. Option 4 says technical social dualism has emerged as a technique for engineering students to incorporate social considerations. In fact, the technical social dualism kind of tells them that the social considerations are not to be incorporated, that they are separate from the process of developing a technical solution. So option 4 is not a claim that the author is making, we eliminate it. Option 3 will have to be our answer. Now let's take a look at this question. We can infer that the author would approve of a more evolved engineering pedagogy that includes all of the following except. This is an except question, but we need to understand what the author would approve of in an engineering curriculum. That is the crux of this question. So let's take a look. Would the author approve of a more responsible approach to technical design instead of a focus on speed and bringing to scale? Definitely. Because if you look at the first paragraph, the author says that currently when we teach engineering problems, we ask students to come up with a single best solution that are defined by technical ideals such as cost, speed and scale. So the author would obviously like a more evolved curriculum that does not only look at the technical parameters but also societal needs. So option 1 is not an exception. This is something the author would approve of. So we eliminate it. Option 2 says making considerations of environmental sustainability. Let's understand that these options are not something that are directly given in the passage. The author has not laid out a plan where he or she has said, these are the things I want in the curriculum. But by looking at different aspects of the passage, we should be able to figure out whether the author would approve or not. That is why it's an inference question. So, has the author talked about the environment? Yes, in paragraph 5, when the author says, and we hardly question whether the devices are built sustainably. Clearly, the author would probably like the program to include environmental concerns or sustainability. So option 2 is not really an exception. We eliminate it. Option 3 says, moving towards technical social dualism, where social community needs are incorporated in problem definition and solutions. This is a tricky option. You have to break it up to see what's wrong with it. Moving towards technical social dualism is not something that the author would approve of, because what is this dualism? If you look at paragraph 1, this dualism assumes that the social dimension of technology is a separate aspect, and this separate aspect is not really taken into account when solving an engineering problem. So option 3 combines ideas which are actually opposite to each other. Moving towards technical social dualism is not going to allow social needs to be incorporated in the problem definition or solution process. So option 3 could be our exception. Let's keep it. Let's move on to option 4. Design that is based on the needs of communities using local knowledge and responding to local priorities. Now, when the author says that the engineering curriculum needs to incorporate societal needs, it would probably suggest that designs should be based on the needs of communities. Perhaps they should come up with some use for the local knowledge or use that local knowledge to create better solutions. But in paragraph 1 also, it says by choosing to downplay public welfare as a critical parameter, we risk creating a culture of disengagement from societal concerns. So clearly the author would approve of anything that is based on the needs of the communities and actually responds to the local culture and priorities. So option 4 cannot be an exception. It would definitely get the author's approval. So we eliminate it. Option 3 would have to be our answer. Now this one is a very simple question, even though there is an except involved, because you should be able to eliminate answers by looking at the text. It's pretty simple. Let's take a look at our first option. First of all, we have to look for examples of negative outcomes that focus on technical ideals in the medical sphere. And since we are looking for an exception, we have to think of something that is not a negative outcome or that is not focused on the technical ideals in the medical sphere. So our first option here clearly talks about the medical sphere. That part is a given. But does it also talk about negative outcomes? Let's see. Neglect of research and development of medical technologies for the diagnosis and treatment of diseases that afflict marginalized communities. This is clearly a negative outcome for a certain section of society. Now, it is possible to solve this question logically, but there is support in the text as well. Paragraph 5 clearly mentions that many technologies have not been built because they were not deemed important enough. Why were they not important enough? Because they would have benefited marginalized sections of society. So option 1 is a negative outcome in the medical sphere because only the technicals were looked at, the social dimension was overlooked. This is not our answer, it's an except question. Option 2 says, continuing calibration of medical devices based on past racial biases that have remained unadjusted for changes. There is a very clear example of this when it talks about spirometers. The calibration for these machines is based on past research that assumed smaller lung capacity in Black and Asian individuals. These machines continue to ignore the influence of social and environmental factors on lung capacity. Now, imagine something like this. Let's assume that you're Indian, most of us are here, but what if you spend most of your life in another country? Would that alter your physical dimensions? Would that affect your lung capacity? Perhaps. The thing is that the machine does not really take into account any of these factors. The machine only deems that if someone belongs to a particular race, then they will have this kind of lung capacity. These assumptions are based on past research. The past research was actually biased, and that bias has never been corrected. So this is an example of a negative outcome due to focus only on the technical ideals. So it cannot be our answer. Now let's take a look at option 3. Incorrect assignment of people as female at birth, which has resulted in faulty drug interventions. There is some mention of this in the passage in paragraph 3. It says that most FDA approved drugs are incorrectly dosed for people assigned female at birth. Why does this happen? Because they have been inadequately represented in clinical trials. By looking at this, we might say that option 3 is not our answer because this is given to us. But again, let's look at option 3 carefully. What is incorrect? The dosage is incorrect. The assignment of people as female is not incorrect. And therefore, option 3 could be our exception. This does not really correspond to the passage, but even without that, incorrect assignment of people as female is not a result of focusing on technical ideals. So whether you look at it logically or whether you look at the text, option 3 seems like a very likely answer, so we keep it. Option 4 says exclusion of non-privileged groups in clinical trials, which leads to incorrect drug dosages. This is what paragraph 3 clearly refers to. Because there were fewer female candidates in the clinical trials, it has led to incorrect drug dosages. So option 4 clearly given and therefore cannot be our answer. The answer is option 3. So on the whole, simple passage. There are a few tricky questions which require a little bit of thought, but I think one can do fairly well provided your comprehension and option elimination skills are good enough. This passage is not really one that I was very happy reading. Honestly, it was a bit of a pain to read. But once I got through to the questions, they were fairly rewarding. So it looks like a pretty complicated passage, but the questions are very, very simple. So in a situation like this, how are you supposed to decide whether you should do the passage or you shouldn't? Honestly, a bit of it is also dependent on how comfortable you are with whatever you're reading. So if I'm not particularly scared by the philosophy of social sciences, I might give this passage a shot. And at the end of it, I would definitely benefit from it. But on the other hand, if you are the kind who feels that this is not a passage that you will be able to get through at all, then regardless of how easy the questions are, this would not be a good passage for you. So let's get started with this for now, and then I will justify my point of why the questions are simple. So we are starting to talk about the emergence of the philosophy of social sciences, and it says that there are two aspects to this. It is seen as an arena of thought, and it is also seen as a set of social institutions. And these two aspects or characterizations overlap but are not congruent. Congruent means they are not in harmony. After that, we are saying that academic disciplines are social institutions, and after that, we are defining what a social institution is according to the author. According to the author, institutions are all those social entities that organize action. They link individuals into social structures. So think about anything that we normally refer to as a social institution. For example, let's take the family. Now, when you belong to a family, then all the members of that family would probably act in a certain way that tells you that they belong to one family. This is what the sentence refers to, that anything characterized as an institution actually coordinates or links the actions of the individuals who are a part of that institution. So that's how I understood that line. After that, it simply goes into describing various types of institutions, and this is a part that I did not go into too much detail because it's fairly complicated. It says there are various kinds of institutions. The Hegelians and the Marxists emphasize universal institutions such as family, rituals, and so on. Then it says that there are institutions that just kind of spontaneously grew, and then there were other institutions that were created. Nevertheless, after that, the author says that even those institutions that apparently grew spontaneously, today even these are regulated. These are controlled and molded to some extent. So on the whole, we are talking about different types of social institutions. After that, the author says that there are formal institutions, there are informal institutions. There are also domains in which we would find both formal and informal. And then the author gives us certain examples. It says, consider the fact that the stock exchange and the black market are both market institutions, one formal, one not. Then it says that there are many features of the work at the stock exchange that rely on informal agreements. So even within one institution, you could have both formal and informal characteristics. So at the end, we are closing this paragraph by saying that on the whole, institutions are generally mixed. Mixed institutions are the norm. So it's a pretty long paragraph. It defines a social institution and it talks about the different types of institutions. So that in fact is what the topic is, the social institutions and their types. It actually does not go and talk about the philosophy of social sciences as a whole. And then we are defining a social institution by saying that it is something that organizes the actions of the individuals. And then we are saying that there are different types, they are formal, informal and mixed institutions are in fact the norm. Now when you go from paragraph 1 to paragraph 2, there seems to be a bit of a disconnect, and it actually took me a while to figure out what the connection is between the three paragraphs. But the first paragraph is generic. It defines what an institution is. It talks about generally how many types there are. But here we are referring to two specific types of institutions, culture and tradition. The first sentence says that it is usual in social thought to treat culture and tradition as different from institutions. They are not considered institutions on their own. The view taken here is different. In other words, the author does not feel that way. Culture and tradition are subsets of institutions. So according to the author, culture and traditions are also institutions. After that, it says that there are different views on what constitutes institutions. Some social scientists have taken all institutions, even purely local ones, to be entities that satisfy basic human needs. Others differed and declared any structure of reciprocal roles and norms an institution. So the view on institution differs for different scientists. So the author is kind of trying to bring about some agreement here by saying, let us straddle all of these versions and present institutions generally. So in general, they are structures that serve to coordinate the actions of individuals. So in the first paragraph also the same thing was being said. So already we should see a theme emerging here. The definition of what a social institution is. It is something that coordinates the actions of individuals, and we discussed the example of a family and how it works there. And then the last sentence says that institutions themselves then have no aims or purpose other than those given to them by actors. So for example, let's think about the family as an institution. Does the family have a very well-defined purpose? The purpose of a particular family would obviously be decided by the family itself. That is what the last sentence says. That other than the purpose given to them by actors, the institution does not have a purpose on its own. Now here the main point actually is very, very simple. All that we're trying to establish is that even though people have differing viewpoints on institutions, we need to consider culture and traditions as subsets of institutions. And there is a general definition that we need to consider. We should generally look upon institutions as structures that coordinate the actions of individuals and therefore have no aims other than those assigned by the individuals themselves. Now let's move on to the third and the last paragraph. In the previous one, we talked about culture and tradition as being institutions, and here we're introducing a new institution, that of language. And we're saying that language, in fact, is pretty important for social life and for science. Of course, just like in the first paragraph, there is formal and informal language, naturally grown or designed. And then we are saying that language are paradigms of institutions, or from another perspective, nested sets of institutions. Now this gets a little complicated, so I'm just going to explain on the whole what is this paragraph trying to say. We are simply trying to establish that language is also an institution, and if you look at it from another perspective, it is not one institution, it is one institution within another, within another, within another. So a nested set of anything is any arrangement in which you have a smaller object embedded in a larger object, then this larger object is part of another larger object, and then it keeps going. So within language, there are many different components which are embedded within larger components. So it's actually a set of institutions rather than a single institution on its own. But again, the main point is pretty simple. Language is an example of an institution, or if you want to say a set of institutions that functions to coordinate human action, because that is the definition of a social institution that we are taking. Now we've reached the end of the passage. If I think about what did I read about overall, what I read about is probably the definition of a social institution, and we talked about different types of social institutions. That's about it. So we should not have any trouble doing a passage recap. In the first paragraph, we said that social institutions organize the actions of individuals and that they come in different varieties, formal, informal, or mixed, and that mixed is the general norm. Then we talked about specific types of social institutions, culture and tradition, which are in fact subsets of institutions. We also said that even though people have differing views, we need to look upon institutions as structures that coordinate the actions of individuals, and that's about it. Then we talked about language as an example of an institution or a set of nested institutions that again functions to coordinate human action, specifically in social life and science. So it's pretty important. So all in all, we have to define what a social institution is in our main idea. So social institutions, including culture, tradition, and language, serve to coordinate the actions of individuals. That's about it. So on the whole, it's a pretty simple passage, unless you get caught up in the details, and then it seems very complicated. Let's go on to the questions. All of the following inferences from the passage are false except. So this is a question with a double negative, false as well as an except, so we will simplify it. Whenever you have a question like this, please convert it to an affirmative statement. It's much easier to process the question then. So instead of saying all of the following are false except, why not look upon it as which of the following are true? So two double negatives make a positive. So now we are going to look for something that we can infer from the passage. That's it. Our first option says institutions like family, rituals, governance, economy, and so on are natural and cannot be consciously modified. But if you look at the text in paragraph 1, it clearly says that in their present incarnations, in their present forms, they are very much the product of conscious attempts to mold and plan them. So they can be modified. So 1 cannot be inferred, we eliminate it. Option 2 says that the institution of friendship cannot be found in the institution of joint stock companies because the first is an informal institution while the second is a formal one. I thought this is a trick option because if you read the first part, you would say, yes, of course, the institution of friendship cannot be found in the institution of joint stock companies. But the thing is that you also have to look at the reason. Why can friendship not be found? Because the first one is an informal institution and the second is a formal one. So what we are implying here is that they cannot be mixed. But again, if you look at the text in paragraph 1, it clearly says that there are some institutions that come in informal and formal variants as well as in mixed ones. So they could have mixed forms also. So option 2 cannot be inferred because we cannot say that just because one is an informal institution and the other is formal, we cannot mix the two. A mixture is always possible, so we eliminate option 2. Option 3 says that the concepts of culture and tradition, or as concepts, culture and tradition have no analytical, explanatory or expository power, especially when they are treated in isolation. In fact, paragraph 2 says that these are analytically isolated for explanatory purposes. The reason that we have actually separated these concepts is in order to explain certain things. So option 3 has been directly contradicted by paragraph 2. Option 4, natural language refers to that stage of language development where no conscious human intent is evident. Natural language is something that does not have any purposeful human action. It's not by human design. And this has been stated in the passage in paragraph 3. Natural languages are typical examples of what Ferguson called the result of human action, but not the execution of human design. Of course, for language to develop, some human action has to be involved, but it is not intentional. Option 4 is confirmed and therefore it's our answer. Now this is a pretty simple and specific question because we just have to look at the first paragraph and even there not the entire paragraph. So we are talking about the two characterizations that are seen as overlapping but not congruent. We use these keywords to locate the relevant text. So if we look at the first paragraph, it says we begin with the emergence of the philosophy of the social sciences as an arena of thought and as a set of social institutions. So these are two aspects of the philosophy of social sciences. It is these two characterizations or aspects that overlap but are not congruent. Congruent means harmonious. And after that it says that academic disciplines are social institutions. So the arena of thought actually refers to academic disciplines. And what the author is trying to point out is that these two aspects are normally not seen as congruent, but in fact academic disciplines are social institutions. So we should not see an arena of thought as separate from social institutions. They should be in harmony. Now having understood this, or even if we have not understood this, it's fine, we can still solve the question. Option 1 says the philosophy of the social sciences and a set of social institutions. Now we are actually looking at two aspects of the philosophy of social sciences. So option 1 cannot be our answer. We have to refer to the two aspects as an arena of thought and as a set of social institutions. This is actually our shadow answer right here. So option 1 cannot be what we are looking for. Option 2 says academic disciplines and institutions. Of course, institutions is definitely one aspect, but what about academic disciplines? Arena of thought, could it refer to academic disciplines? Yes, it could, because the very next line here says academic disciplines are social institutions. So perhaps we are referring to the arena of thought. So it could be option 2, we retain it. Option 3 says an arena of thought and academic disciplines. So here we have the first phrase, but we don't have the set of social institutions. So it cannot be option 3 because the arena of thought is kind of equal to an academic discipline. So option 3 is not really referring to two different aspects. We eliminate it. Option 4 says individuals and social structures. Now social structures possibly could relate to social institutions, but individuals cannot be equated with an arena of thought. So it cannot be option 4. So we eliminate option 4. Option 2 would have to be our answer. So I thought it was a pretty easy question, provided you were not in a hurry. Now here we have to explain the given quote. The quote is, consider the fact that the stock exchange and the black market are both market institutions, one formal, one not. This is clearly an example that has been mentioned in paragraph 1. So we need to always look at what is the point that this example is illustrating, and the point of this example has been highlighted here in bold for you. So when we have to explain this quote, we always need to think about the larger point being made. What we are really trying to say is that some institutions come in both formal and informal variants as well as in mixed ones. And as an example, we are taking the stock exchange and the black market. Let's keep this in mind and evaluate our options. Let's take a look at option 1. Here it says market instruments can be formally traded in the stock exchange and informally traded in the black market. Perhaps this is true. Perhaps this is what happens in real life. Honestly, we can't say because this is not given to us in the passage. So it's not really about the trading of market instruments that we're referring to. We're actually trying to say that within the market, we could have formal, informal and mixed institutions. So option 1 is not really the proper explanation. We eliminate it. Option 2 says the stock exchange and the black market are examples of how within the same domain, different kinds of institutions can coexist. That is exactly what the highlighted part is saying. So we should retain option 2. Option 3 says that the stock exchange and the black market are both dependent on the market to survive. Again, regardless of whether this is true or not, this is not the explanation or the larger point that the example is making. So option 3 should be eliminated. Option 4 says the stock exchange and the black market are both organized to function by rules. Perhaps there are certain informal rules or formal ones. That's not again going to relate to the larger point being made by the example given here. So option 4 should be eliminated. What we need to keep in mind is whenever it asks us to explain why a particular example has been used, a lot of times the function or the main point is mentioned somewhere around that example. So instead of looking everywhere in the passage, start with the example, look at the sentence before it and after it and see if you can find your answer there. And that's exactly what we have done. So it's a pretty simple question. Our answer is definitely 2 because it's explicitly stated for us in paragraph 1. Now we have an essence of the passage, nothing but the main idea that we are looking for. Now this question should be easy for us because we've already done a passage recap and we've already figured out the main idea. So let's take a look at that now. The passage overall talks about different types of social institutions and also defines a social institution as something that serves to coordinate the actions of individuals. That's it. That's the whole story. Let's take a look at our options. Now, option 1 I can see is pretty limited because it only talks about language, which is only one of the institutions that the passage has dealt with. So, this cannot be the mean or the essence of the passage. So, we eliminate it. Option 2 says institutions are structures that serve to coordinate the actions of individuals. The same story has been repeated across paragraphs. It is also a shadow answer. So, we should retain option 2. It's actually a pretty good option. Option 3 says it is usual in social thought to treat culture and tradition as different from institutions. This is true. It is mentioned in the passage. But again, this is just one point in the entire passage. The whole passage is not about culture and tradition. It is about social institutions in general. So, option 3 cannot be the essence of the text or the passage in this case. Option 4 says the stock exchange and the black market are both market institutions. Pretty easy to eliminate because these are just examples that have been mentioned, cannot be the essence of the passage. So, option 2 is definitely our answer. A very, very simple question. So, this is how I decided that if you got through the tedious passage, you would actually feel rewarded because the questions are pretty simple. A lot of the answers are explicitly given to you. So, it's possible in fact to get all 4 questions correct for this passage. This passage is not particularly easy. It's not easy to read, and I think the questions also take some effort. Nevertheless, let's get started. We'll try our best. So the author starts off with a general statement saying humans today make music. After that, the author says that when I make this bald statement, a bald statement is a general statement without further explanation, a lot of conditions might come up. So people might raise objections. For example, only certain humans make music, that a lot of training is involved. So the author is saying, okay, let's keep these conditions in mind. They may have some merit in some cases, but they are moot in the face of the overarching truth that making music from a cognitive and psychological vantage or viewpoint is the province of those who perceive and experience what is made. So, if I simplify it, the author is saying that yes, I can consider all of these objections, but even if we look at these objections, there is a general truth that applies, that from the cognitive and the psychological viewpoint, anyone who can perceive and experience music is capable of making music. So the author is still asserting that in general, humans are musicking creatures, which is the last sentence of the first paragraph. So the passage is obviously talking about the human ability to make music, and the author is trying to simply say that humans are musicking creatures because from the cognitive and the psychological viewpoint, all those who can perceive and experience music can also make music. Let's move on to the second paragraph. Now here we are saying that music making involves a lot of different abilities, and the set of abilities that enables us to make music is actually an important characteristic of modern humanity. Then the author says that a lot of the abilities that are involved in music making are also non-musical abilities. For example, language. And the author says that linguistic capacities seem to be particularly important to humans because humans are not only music creatures or musicking creatures, they are also speaking creatures. So the author is simply trying to highlight that there are a lot of abilities that go along with the capacity to make music, and all of these abilities together kind of mark out modern humans. They are an important shared trait of modern humans. So let's just sum up this argument by saying that the set of abilities that enable us to make music, they also overlap with non-musical abilities, with language being a pretty important area of overlap. It's an important ability both for music making as well as for non-musical tasks. Now paragraph 3 says that humans are symbol makers also. However, the author is also saying that in fundamental features, musicking is neither language-like nor symbol-like. So, if it is not necessarily similar to language or necessarily similar to symbol making, then it is possible that musicking is an ancient craft, that is, it is an ancient ability. And that is what the last sentence talks about. So to sum up the argument in a few words, all that the author is trying to say here is that in fundamental features, musicking is neither language-like nor symbol-like, which gives us some clues about its ancient emergence. Let's move on. Now we have already established that musicking is an important and a shared trait of modern humans. So if we want to figure out how and when music emerged, we will have to go back to the time that modern humans were also emerging. That is what the first sentence is talking about. This took place. When we say this took place, it is about the emergence of modern humans over a very long duration, 50,000 years, maybe 200,000 years, depending on when modern humanity was deemed to be modern humanity. And as we move through this paragraph, it's trying to say that as we go back further in history, we might find that maybe 20,000 years ago, the kind of musical capacities that humans had are not very different from the kind that we have. Now, if we go back maybe 70,000 or 100,000, maybe the similarity will not hold. Maybe we will find that their musical capacities are slightly different from the kind that we have today. But at no point do we cross a line before which all cognitive capacities abruptly disappear. So what are we really saying? We cannot assume that the ability to make music or the abilities that contribute to making music appeared all of a sudden. So if we want to trace back the emergence of music making, we will have to do it very gradually over a period of time, because we will also have to trace the emergence of the other abilities that makes up modern humanity. So this is simply about the emergence of music. The argument simply is that musicking, since it is a shared trait of modern humanity, will have to be traced or tracked over a long period of time, which will also involve detailing the emergence of modern humans. Now, paragraph 5 does not really say much, so let's just sum it up in one go. What we are trying to say here is that musicking involves many human capacities or abilities, and so describing its emergence actually involves following several separate strands. So, for example, let's think about it. Musicking involves language. It involves certain cognitive abilities other than language. So, if we are trying to figure out when music emerged, we would also have to trace the emergence of these separate abilities that contribute to music making. So that's what is meant by following several separate strands. Now here we are also establishing that the history is not only biological, it is also socio-cultural. So there were probably certain social or cultural factors that could have contributed to the ability to make music also. Now this point is important because there is a question about it later, so let's keep this in mind. For now, let's do a passage recap and then come up with the main idea. So in the first paragraph, we simply established that humans are musicking creatures because if you can perceive and experience music, you can also make music. After that, we said that the set of abilities that allows us to make music actually overlaps with non-musical abilities also, with language being an important ability that is both musical and non-musical. After that, we said that in fundamental features, musicking is neither language-like nor symbol-like, which tells us something about the fact that it probably is an ancient ability. It emerged in ancient times. And then we said that since musicking is a primary and a shared trait of modern humans, if we want to figure out its emergence, how it developed over time, we would also need to look at the emergence of modern humanity itself, and that may be tracing history to 50,000 years or 200,000 years, depending on whenever we decide modern humanity emerged or came into existence. And in the last paragraph, we simply said that musicking involves several human capacities. So if we want to figure out how it emerged, we might have to follow different strands because we would have to trace the emergence of different abilities that contribute to music making. So ultimately, we know that we are talking about the human's ability to make music, but the main idea can be summed up something like this, that musicking or music making is an important shared trait of modern humans. It involves multiple abilities. So if we want to describe its emergence, we would have to go back and detail the emergence of humanity over a long period of time, which might take us back to ancient times also. Now we are ready to look at the questions. The first question here gives us a quote. Think beyond all the qualifications that might trail after this bald statement. Now this is not a very difficult question because if we understand what this quote is, then we will be able to figure out the answer also. All we have to figure out is what is the author trying to communicate when he or she says this. So let's take a look at the context. A bald statement is a general statement in simple language that does not have any additional qualifications or explanations. Now, what is a qualification? In this case, it's not referring to your professional or educational qualification. It is actually referring to any condition or limit that is attached to a general statement. Keeping this in mind, let's look at the paragraph where the statement emerges. Now, in paragraph 1, the author says, think beyond all the qualifications that might trail after this bald statement. So, the author has made a general statement that humans are musicking creatures, that they have the capacity to make music. Then the author says that probably people are going to come up with a lot of qualifications or conditions to this statement. But let's set aside all of these qualifications. They might have some merit, but the overarching truth is that all those who can experience and perceive music are capable of making music. So ultimately, this is what our option has to convey. We have a shadow answer. Let's take a look at our first option. A bald statement is one that requires no qualifications. But the author is not saying that a bald statement does not require any qualifications, because we know that a bald statement is a pretty generic statement. We could qualify it. So option 1 is not our answer. Option 2 says, thinking beyond qualifications allows us to give free rein to musical expressions. So the author is not generally trying to say that if you think beyond limits, you will be able to express yourself musically. That's not really the point that is being made. The author is trying to say, whatever doubts you have or objections you have about this general statement, I'm still sticking to my general statement. So option 2 is not the author's message. We eliminate it. Now let's take a look at option 3. Although there may be many caveats and other considerations, the statement is essentially true. Now a caveat is a proviso. It's some sort of a condition that is attached to a general statement. Now, what is the author trying to say in paragraph 1? Exactly this, that even though there might be certain conditions to this general statement, the general statement is still true. So option 3 is exactly the author's message. We should retain it. Option 4 says that a bald statement is one that is trailed or followed by a series of qualifying clarifications. But the author has not generally talked about bald statements. He's not saying that a bald statement is generally followed by qualifying clarifications. So option 4 should be eliminated. Option 3 is our answer. So whenever they give you a quote and they ask you what is the author's message, a lot of times you will be able to figure out the answer from the surrounding context, which is what we have done in this case. So read the statement carefully, read a sentence before and after, and you'll find your answer. Be careful of generalizations, such as option 1, 2, and 4. They don't refer to this particular statement. They are randomly making statements about some general truth, which is not really the author's message. Let's move on to the next question. Which one of the following statements, if true, would weaken the author's claim that humans are musicking creatures? Now, this clearly involves some degree of reasoning. And I thought that this question was a little tricky, but we have to understand what the author's claim is. So the author has said in the very first paragraph that in general, humans have music making capacity. Why? Because they can perceive and experience music. So if you can do that, you can also make music. Now, let's look at our first option. As musicking is neither language-like nor symbol-like, it is a much older form of expression. Now, if music is an old or an ancient form of expression, we might be able to say that it might be a capacity that is inherent to all humans. That is one way of looking at it. Let's of course check the text as well. What it's trying to say is that since it is neither like a language nor symbol-like, it gives us clues about its ancient emergence. So paragraph 3 also confirms that statement 1 is true. However, does this really weaken the author's claim that humans are musicking creatures? Not really. All that it establishes is that musicking is an ancient ability. So we should eliminate option 1. Option 2 says, from a cognitive and psychological vantage or viewpoint, musicking arises from unconscious dispositions, not conscious ones. Again, this has been confirmed by paragraph 2. It clearly says that the capacities involved in musicking take shape in complicated ways arising from innate dispositions. If something is innate, then we might believe that it is true of humanity. We have already established in paragraph 2 that the set of capacities that enables musicking is a shared trait. It is an important feature of modern humans. So, if option 2 is true, if musicking is an innate capacity, then it's not going to weaken the author's claim that humans are musicking creatures. It will actually strengthen that claim more than anything else. So option 2 should be eliminated. Option 3 says non-musical capacities are of far greater consequence to human survival than the capacity for music. Now, the passage does not really tell us which of these are of greater importance. All that the passage says is that a lot of capacities are both musical and non-musical. But even if we take statement 3 to be true, because it is a weaken the argument question, so it is allowed to give us extra information. Even that does not really weaken the argument that humans are musicking creatures. Even if musical capacity is not absolutely essential to survival, or that it is not the greatest skill that we need, it could still be a shared trait for all humans. So option 3 cannot be our answer. Option 4 says musical capacities are primarily socio-cultural, which explains the wide diversity of musical forms. Now, this has been referred to in paragraph 5, that the history of the emergence of music was one socio-cultural and biological. The moment something becomes socio-cultural, it means that it is dependent on the social conditions in which one lives. And this tells us that music may not be a general characteristic of all humans. It might be something that is true of some societies and not of others. And so option 4 is the only one that questions the author's claim that humans in general are musicking creatures. So we pick option 4 as our answer. Now, when I was solving this question, I was genuinely puzzled by the logic that I'm supposed to follow. Should I be looking at the passage? Should I simply be trying to reason out the answer? So I tried a combination of both. What you need to remember for strengthen and weaken questions is that you need to understand the argument. The options may present extra information to you, like some of these options do. You have to evaluate whether that option is impacting the conclusion or the argument in any way. So even if the option is true, it may not necessarily weaken the argument. And that is how we ultimately arrived at the answer, which is option 4. But a tough question. So if you got this wrong, clearly not something that you need to worry extensively about. Based on the passage, which one of the following statements is a valid argument about the emergence of music or musicking? It's a very specific question, and we need to understand that the argument is about the emergence of music. Let's keep that in mind. Option 1 says that musicking is not language-like, but it shares the quality of being a form of expression. Now, if I look at the text, paragraph 3 says that musicking is neither language-like nor symbol-like, but from these differences come many clues to its ancient emergence. Now, it seems to suggest that because music is different from language and symbolism, it might be an ancient skill. But let's look at what the option says here. Although musicking is not language-like, it shares the quality of being a form of expression. Paragraph 3 does not say that. It's not saying that both language and music have the quality of being forms of expression. The form of expression angle is actually applied to symbol making right here. So option 1 is not really going to be a valid argument because this has to be based on the passage. So we eliminate it. Option 2 says anyone who can perceive and experience music must be considered capable of musicking. This is clearly given to us in the passage. But then this says nothing about the emergence of music. So it's kind of irrelevant to the argument in this question. So we eliminate option 2. Please remember, in strengthen or weaken or any such question, even if an option is true according to the passage, it may not have any relevance to the argument that is being evaluated. So option 2 therefore is not the answer. Now, option 3 does talk about the history of music. 20,000 years ago, human musical capacities were not very different from what they are today. This is confirmed by the passage, and it also talks about the emergence of music. So I would keep option 3. It looks very promising. Now, 4 says all musical work is located in the overlap between linguistic capacity and music production. I'd be doubtful about option 4 to begin with because it says all musical work. Now, option 4 says all musical work is located in the overlap between linguistic capacity and music production. Now, this option seems to limit musical work to musical capacity and linguistic capacity. That's how I looked at it. Now, if we look at the passage, it clearly says that language is important to music making, but other abilities are also important. So we cannot say that all musical work is located in this overlap. There is no evidence for that in the passage. So we eliminate option 4 and we select option 3 as our answer. Now this says which one of the following sets of terms best serves as keywords to the passage. For this, you need to have a thought flow map. You should have a passage map that kind of highlights the keywords. So in case you don't have it at hand, we have it for you right here. In the first paragraph, we talked about humans and musicking. Then we talked about language. Then we talked about symbol making. And then we said that it's an important trait of modern humans. And then we talked about history having separate strands. We need to look for an option that more or less has similar keywords. So option 1 talks about musicking. Then it talks about cognitive psychology, which is actually not a major thing in the passage. It's just been mentioned once that from a cognitive vantage, we have the ability to make music. Then it says antique. Yes, it is an ancient ability. It talks about symbol makers and it talks about modernity. But it's missing out on something very, very important. It misses out on the language being an important area of overlap. So option 1 cannot be our answer. Option 2 says humans, musicking, so it covers the first point, linguistic capacities, so that's our second point, symbol making, that's our third point. So this is already looking good. And then modern humanity. Now, option 2 does not talk about these different strands, but then we rarely get a perfect option. So we should retain option 2 and see if there's anything better. Option 3 is missing out on the main idea that humans are musicking creatures. It doesn't talk about music, and so option 3 cannot be our answer. Option 4 says humans, psychological vantage, musicking, and then it brings in 𝐶𝐻, who again has been mentioned in the passage but is not a very important person. So I would be in doubt about option 4. And emergence of music. So if I look at this, it's missing the linguistic aspect. So option 4 is definitely not a good option. We eliminate it. Option 2 is definitely our answer. So I thought it was a pretty easy question if you had the passage map at hand. This passage is probably amongst the simplest ones in this slot. Let's get started. So it talks about octopuses and it says that they are misfits in their own extended families. They belong to a mollusca class cephalopoda. Now, let's not get caught up in understanding what mollusca and cephalopoda are. We need to always look beyond these technical details and figure out the main point. Overall, what it's trying to say here is that octopuses are different from other mollusks. They belong to a class or a category called cephalopoda. So, we are talking about cephalopods and we are trying to simply say that unlike other mollusks, cephalopods lack shells and they have many arms. If you look at the last sentence here, cephalopods are all arms. They can be as tiny as 1 centimeter and as large as 30 feet. And some of them have relatively large brains. But we cannot include all the characteristics here when we are trying to sum up the paragraph. So let's just stick to the main points. Now, on the whole, this passage is descriptive. Most of it has a lot of information. So it's pretty easy to read through. You don't have to try to memorize all the information because it's always going to be available to you if you want to check back. So we're going to try and get past the technical details and figure out the main idea as fast as we can. Now here it says that cephalopods are vulnerable to predators because they don't have shells. So what is their special ability? They have something called an invisibility cloak. Now of course, this is not a real invisibility cloak, unlike some of the movies that we have seen in the past. This is talking about their ability for concealment. They're able to hide themselves. And how do they hide themselves? Using 4 main catalysts: chromatophores, iridophores, papillae, and leucophores. Again, we don't have to remember this. Let's just try to sum up the point here. Since they lack shells, cephalopods are able to hide from predators with the help of chromatophores, iridophores, papillae, and leucophores. Now, the next few paragraphs, of course, will talk a little bit more about these 4 terms. So let's take a look at paragraph 3. Now here it says that chromatophores are organs that contain pigment sacs. Now pigments obviously have to do with color. What they allow cephalopods to do is to change color. We don't have to go through all the technical details as to how the color is displayed, which muscle is activated, what kind of signal is sent. But on the whole, we need to understand that chromatophores allow the cephalopods to change color. Specifically, it allows them to display red, yellow, and brown pigments on their skin. Now, why these specific colors? Because these are the colors the light reflects at the depths they live in. The rest is absorbed before it reaches those depths. So what we need to understand is that in order to hide, you don't actually need to become invisible. You just need to blend in with your surroundings. And since the surroundings are usually red, yellow, and brown for these creatures, therefore they change the color to hide in plain sight. Again, let's sum up the argument by saying that chromatophores help cephalopods camouflage themselves by displaying red, yellow, and brown colors on the skin. A lot of animals, in fact, use the same ability. When you look at the military attire, again, it is designed to camouflage. So it's the same thing that we are talking about, blending in with your surroundings. Now here it says, what about other colors? What if the water or the surroundings are not those 3 colors that they can display on the skin? Cue the iridophores. So this is where the iridophores come into action. Think of a second level skin that has thin stacks of cells. Now this part gets a little too complicated for my understanding, so I'm going to skip past it and look at the last bit. All of us have seen hologram stickers, right? So now we can visualize what is happening here. You move your head, you see a different color. The sticker isn't doing anything, but the reflecting light, it kind of changes as per your movement. So they have something called iridophores, which, like a hologram sticker, reflects light back at different wavelengths. Now, because of this, every time that the creature moves, you're probably going to see a slightly different picture or a slightly different type of light, which of course will allow the cephalopod to blend in with the surroundings. So all of it is designed to help these creatures hide in plain sight. Now, paragraph 5 talks about papillae. They are sections of the skin that can be deformed to make a texture bumpy. Why would we want to make the texture bumpy? Well, the cephalopods might use this ability in order to match the texture of the surface that they are lying on. So, for example, if the creature is resting on a particular rock, it might want to take up the texture of that rock. So, again, this is a form of camouflage. So, that's all we need to understand here, that cephalopods use papillae to deform the texture of the skin and match the texture of the substrate. Now, paragraph 6 talks about leucophores. According to a paper published in Nature, cuttlefish and octopuses possess an additional type of reflector cell. So, they already have one variety. This is an additional variety. Now, leucophores allow these creatures to appear white, like a polar bear, but it can also allow them to turn blue or green, basically take on the color of their surroundings. So, another form of camouflage. So, the argument here is very simple. Leucophores are a type of reflector cell that scatter full spectrum light to make the cephalopods appear white or reflect any filtered light shown on them. Now, we've almost read through the entire passage. Let's do a passage recap and we'll get to the questions. There isn't too much that we really need to dig or understand here because most of it is just factual. In the first paragraph, we said that unlike other mollusks, cephalopods lack shells and have many arms. In the next paragraph, we said that since cephalopods lack shells or any other form of protection of that sort, they hide from predators with the help of chromatophores, iridophores, papillae, and leucophores. Then we said that chromatophores help them camouflage themselves by displaying red, yellow, and brown colors on their skin, but this is not the only weapon in their arsenal. Iridophores are like hologram stickers, so they reflect light back at different wavelengths, depending on how the creature is moving. Then we said that cephalopods are also able to deform their skin using papillae in order to match the texture of their substrate. And finally, we said that there are these additional reflector cells called leucophores that allow them to appear white or reflect any filtered light that is shown on them. So at the end, we're just trying to say that unlike other mollusks, cephalopods lack shells and therefore have to hide from predators as defense. How do they hide? With the help of chromatophores, iridophores, papillae, and leucophores. Pretty simple passage. Let's move on to the questions. Now, this question says, based on the passage, we can infer that all of the following statements, if true, would weaken the camouflaging adeptness of cephalopods except. So, we need to search for a statement that does not weaken the camouflaging ability of the cephalopod. Let's take a look at our first statement. Before we look at option 1, let's keep the reference text right here on the screen so that we can refer to it as and when required. So, the first option here says, light reflects the colors red, green, and yellow at the depth at which cephalopods reside. Now, we know that chromatophores allow the cephalopods to change their skin to red, yellow, or brown. But what if the lights that are reflected at those levels are not the same? What if they are red, green, and yellow? This will of course weaken the camouflaging ability of the cephalopod. So option 1 is not an exception. We eliminate it and let's look at option 2. The temperature of water at the depth at which cephalopods reside renders the transmission of neural signals difficult. Why are these neural signals important? Let's keep reading. It says these are connected to the brain by a nerve. What are these referring to? These sacs with radial muscles. So these are connected to the brain by a nerve. When the cephalopod wants to change color, the brain carries an electrical impulse through the nerve to the muscles, and then the muscles can respond to that signal. But what if the neural signals cannot be transmitted? In which case, the musculature will not change, the colors will not be displayed, and the cephalopod will not be able to camouflage itself. So option 2 will also weaken the cephalopod's ability to hide, and so 2 is not an exception. Option 3 says the number of chromatophores in cephalopods is half the number of iridophores and leucophores. The number honestly is not important, and that's not been taken into account in the passage. So this fact does not weaken or strengthen. In fact, it has no impact as far as we know on the camouflaging ability. So option 3 could be our answer. Let's keep it. Option 4 says that the hydrostatic pressure at the depth at which the cephalopods reside renders radial muscle movements difficult. Now, of course, we know that these colors are displayed with the help of the radial muscles. So, if radial muscles cannot be moved, the colors cannot be displayed, and this will weaken the camouflaging adeptness. So, option 4 is not an exception, we eliminate it. Option 3 will have to be our answer. So, as long as you read this question correctly and you are not tricked by the except, this question is pretty simple. All of the following are reasons for octopuses being misfits except that they. So we need to pick something that is not a reason for the octopuses being misfits. Let's take a look at paragraph 1. We'll refer to it as and when required. Option 1 says, exhibit higher intelligence than other mollusks. Now, paragraph 1, the last sentence here clearly says some of them have brains the size of a walnut, which is large for an invertebrate. A larger brain may not always mean higher intelligence, but the same fact has been referred to in paragraph 2, where it says that higher cognitive ability might definitely help the cephalopods. So this is one of the reasons that octopuses might be misfits, because the other invertebrates don't really have this ability. Now, option 1 cannot be our answer because this is a reason why octopuses are misfits. We need to look for something that is not a reason. So we eliminate option 1. Option 2 says have several arms. How is this going to make octopuses misfits? Let's take a look. It says that other mollusks are generally shelled invertebrates with a dorsal foot, but cephalopods are all arms. So this is one of the reasons that the author is saying that they are misfits in their own extended families. The mollusks are different from the other cephalopods that include octopuses. So option 2 is also a reason for octopuses being misfits. It cannot be our answer. Option 3 says do not possess an outer protective shell. This is a reason that octopuses are misfits. Let's take a look. Other mollusks include sea snails, sea slugs and bivalves. Most are shelled invertebrates, but octopuses do not have shells, so that is another reason why they are misfits. So we eliminate option 3. Option 4 says because they are consumed by humans and other animals. While this may be true, this is not a reason for the octopus being a misfit in its own family. So option 4 becomes our answer. Which one of the following statements is not true about the camouflaging ability of cephalopods? Again, please remember, we're looking for something not true. Option 1 says cephalopods can change their texture. Well, this is pretty easy to derive from paragraph 5. It says that with the help of papillae, they can actually deform their skin to match the substrate. So option 1 is true. We eliminate it. Option 2 says cephalopods can blend into the color of their surroundings. This we have already seen that they can do. Paragraph 6 talks about the leucophores. It says very clearly that if the water appears blue at a certain depth, the octopuses and cuttlefish can appear blue. If the water appears green, they appear green, and so on. And not just this, they can also use the chromatophores to change their color, if you recall. So they can definitely blend into the color of their surroundings. This is a true statement, so we eliminate it. Option 3 says they can take on the color of their predator. Now, as far as we have read, there is really nothing mentioned that allows them to assume the same color as their predators. So option 3 is not true according to the passage, we keep it. Option 4 says cephalopods can change their color. Well, of course they can, not only because of what is said in paragraph 6, but also because of paragraph 3. So this talks about the chromatophores, which allows the cephalopod to change color. Option 4 is true, so we eliminate it. Option 3 will have to be an answer. Now, this question says, based on the passage, it can be inferred that camouflaging techniques in an octopus are most dissimilar to those in. So we have to find which creatures are octopuses different from in terms of their camouflaging ability. Now, option 1 says cuttlefish. Let's take a look at the text. Now, paragraph 5 clearly says that octopuses are very similar to squid and cuttlefish. All of them can imitate the look of the surrounding substrate or the surrounding surface. So Option 1 cannot be our answer. We are looking for creatures that are dissimilar. So we eliminate option 1. Now let's take a look at option 2, polar bears. If we take a look at paragraph 6, this clearly shows that cuttlefish, octopuses are very similar to polar bears in terms of their ability to camouflage. So option 2 cannot be our answer. Now option 3 is sea snails. We know that sea snails in fact possess a shell. So this is probably going to be very dissimilar from an octopus because octopuses do not possess shells. So we retain 3. Let's take a look at option 4. Squids. Clearly, the squid is given to us as being similar to an octopus. So squid cannot be our answer. It will have to be sea snails. And so another easy question. This question here is the new para-completion question type that was introduced in CAT 2022. But there's nothing difficult about it really. There's a sentence that is given to us. Most were first-time users of a tablet and a digital app. All that we need to figure out is the best place to put this sentence in the paragraph. So how do we do that? Of course, we're going to look for some clues within the sentence. But more importantly, this sentence has to logically follow from the sentence before it and be connected to the sentence after it as well. So when we start reading, it says 𝐈𝐭e 𝐬𝐻𝐑's USP lies in the ethnographic research that constituted the foundation of its development process. After that, it says that the customizations were based on learning directly from potential users, making this app suitable for both a literate and a non-literate audience. Now here, can we say that both the literate and the non-literate audience were first-time users of a tablet and a digital app? That's not quite appropriate because when we say both a literate and a non-literate audience, the idea is to convey that the data was taken from a wide variety of users. So we cannot say right after this that most were first-time users of a tablet and a digital app. So option 1 is not really the best place for the sentence. Now, let's take a look at the next one. The user interface caters to a Hindi-speaking audience who have minimal to no experience with digital services and devices. Now, the sentence could fit in really well here because clearly we are talking about users with minimal to no experience. So after this, it's logical to say that most were first-time users of a tablet and a digital app. So let's keep 2 for now. Now, if you look at the third blank, here we're talking about a youth preparing for an independent role in life or a student ready to create a strong foundation of financial management early in her life. We're talking about a particular example, singular. Right after this, I cannot say most were first-time users because the word most and users clearly pertain to plural. So there is a bit of grammar involved here as well, but it's not very complicated grammar. When we say most, we would obviously be referring to a group of people. So the sentence before this has to refer to a group rather than an individual. So option 3 cannot be our answer. Now let's look at option 4. Just before this, it says we piloted 𝐈𝐭e 𝐬𝐻𝐑 early in 2021 with over 400 women from rural areas. Then there is a blank. The digital solution generated a large amount of interest in the community. Now, when we say 400 women from rural areas, could we possibly say that most of these women were first-time users of a tablet and a digital app? Yes, we can. So option 4 is also a good choice. Now I have a choice between 2 and 4. So how do I decide? Again, grammar comes to our rescue. If I look at blank 2, it is talking about the user interface in the present tense. The user interface caters to a Hindi-speaking audience who have minimal to no experience, which means that we are generally trying to state a fact. We are not actually talking about an audience who have no experience. So it is best that we eliminate blank 2 and we stick to blank 4 as our answer because here we are clearly talking about an event that happened in the past. So this was piloted with 400 women from rural areas and these women were the first-time users of the tablet. Having looked at all of this, we can say that option 4 in fact should be our answer, and as you can see in the paragraph, the sentence fits in pretty well there. Here we have a summary question. Now before we go to the options straight away, I'm sure that you have already read the paragraph. We normally try to identify the main points before looking at the options. When we do this, it usually saves us the effort of trying to decide between two close options because we already know what we are looking for. So as we read this, the first sentence is pretty important. So we identify the first sentence as our main point, that although we believe that museum artworks are timeless objects, they are in fact susceptible to decay. They don't last forever. After that, it gives us a lot of details about the type of decay that these artworks are susceptible to. But this is just details. So we're not going to definitely include it in our summary. We can, but it's not very, very important. The next main point that comes through is the challenging fact of art world life is down to something that sounds more like a thread from a morality tale, inherent vice. Now, I actually had to think a bit about this one and wonder, how would artwork contain vice? Vice refers to evil or wicked tendencies sometimes, but in this case, the word vice actually has a slightly different connotation. What we're probably trying to say is that this fact is the result of some inherent flaw or disadvantage in the work of art. Because right after that, we're taking the example of Damien Hirst's iconic shark floating in a tank, and it's talking about the mistake that Hirst made. So, though this is an example, we can still include it here because it does occupy a large chunk of this passage, although in general in a summary question, we do not need to include the example. So, we'll just shorten it for now. Damien Hirst's iconic shark floating in a tank started decaying because he did not use the right kind of preservative. That's about it. Keeping these 3 points in mind, now we're going to evaluate our options. So, our first option says, museums are left with the moral responsibility of restoring and preserving the artworks. Now, I believe that the creator of the test decided that the moment you see vice, you might decide that there is morality involved. But the passage actually does not say that the museums have a moral responsibility. All that it says is that the works of art are capable of decay, or rather, they are most likely to decay. But that does not mean that museums are bound to preserve them. So option 1 has distorted the message and we should eliminate it. Option 2 says that artworks may not last forever. This is our point X. They may deteriorate with time. That kind of covers our point Y. The inherent flaw is the tendency to deteriorate, and the challenge is to slow down their degeneration. I was actually a little uncertain about the last bit, the part that says the challenge is to slow down their degeneration. This is not something that I clearly saw in the passage, but I still kept it because most of this option seems to be accurate. Now let's move on to option 3. Museums have to guard timeless art treasures from intrinsic defects such as deterioration of paint, polish and canvas. While this looks like a very good option, it does not necessarily say that museums have to guard. It does not say who is responsible for preserving the artwork, and that is why option 3 is not really a good answer, even though it looks very attractive. Option 4 says that the role of museums has evolved to ensure that the artworks are preserved forever. Now, this option can be eliminated right away because we are starting off by saying that artworks are susceptible to decay, and nowhere are we really saying that they can be preserved forever. So, option 4 is eliminated, and despite how unhappy I feel about choosing option 2, that would still have to be our answer. So, please remember, in a lot of questions, you may not have a good option. You just have to pick the best out of the worst. Here we have another para-completion question. So, we're going to use exactly the same method that we did last time, except that this question is far easier than the previous one. The biggest clue is, he explained. So, let's take a look at this sentence right here. So, this was years in the making, but fast-tracked during the pandemic when people started being more mindful about their food, he explained. So, we would have to mention a person who is explaining this right before this sentence. So, let's keep that in mind. Now, if I look at the first blank, there is really no person that we can refer to when we say he explained. So, option 1 cannot be my answer. So, it's easy to cross it out. Now, let's look at the second blank. Just before this, we are saying Indians are finding their own way back to this ingredient that is so integral to their cuisine. Now, again, I have not really mentioned a person that I can refer to as he. So, option 2 also cannot be my answer. But right after the second blank, I am mentioning someone's name for Karmakar. So, blank 3 is actually my best bet because we have already talked about Karmakar. So, we keep 3. Let's move on to the fourth one. Now, here we are saying that this movement is also part of an overall trend towards slow food. In keeping with the movement's philosophy, ghee can be produced locally, even at home, and has inextricable cultural ties. But the thing is that if I put in the quote in blank 4, again I have no he to refer to. So blank 4 is also not going to be my answer. So I can be pretty sure that blank 3 is the correct place to put this sentence. And when we do that, it looks pretty good. So our answer is going to be option 3. Now here we have a parajumble question, and we're going to use the sort link sequence strategy to do this. So let's take a look. The first sentence here says that from chemical pollutants in the environment to the damming of rivers and so on, every environmental issue is different and there is no single solution that can solve the crisis. Now, the detail in this question tells me that it is not likely to be the starter, but we can't really be sure. So, for now, we say that it may be the starter, because until we have found a better sentence, we cannot really say. Let's look at the second one. Discourse on the threat of environmental collapse revolves around cutting down emissions, but biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse are caused by myriad and diverse reasons. This is definitely my starter, because now we are introducing the discourse or the discussion on environmental collapse. So I know that this is my starter. Not only that, I should also be able to see that 2 and 1 are possibly linked. 2 says that environmental collapse is caused by myriad reasons. And then the first one kind of extends that point. Since there are so many reasons, every issue is different, and therefore a single tech solution will not do. So we have linked 2 and 1. So I hope you understand why we did that. Now let's move on to option 3. This would require legislation that recognizes the rights of future generations. When we say this would require legislation, I'm not really sure what sentence this is going to follow, but I know for sure that it is a follower. So we say that for now. Let's take a look at statement 4. Clearly, our environmental crisis requires large political solutions. When we say clearly, it means that it is derived from the statement just before it. Why do we require a large solution? Let's look at 1. Because every environmental issue is different, and there is no single tech solution that will solve the crisis. So technology is not the answer. We need a political solution. So I should be able to link 1 and 4. So 4 should follow 1. Because there is no solution, therefore we need a larger political solution. And we should also be able to see one more thing right here. Since we are talking about a political solution, 3 should follow from here. When looking for a political solution, we would probably say this would then require legislation, because what is politics? Basically, there are people that we entrust to make our laws for us. So we link 1 and 4. Now at this point, it's possible that the entire sequence is done. However, if you feel a little unsure, what you can do is read all the statements one more time, put down whatever sequence you have created so far. So far we have 2, 1 and 4. We haven't really decided what to do with 3, although we said that 3 seems to follow from 4. Now, if I look at the sequence, 2, 1, 4 seems to make sense. There is really no other place that we can place 3. 3 also is logically connected to 4. So my option should be 2, 1, 4, 3. It's not a very easy parajumble question, but can be done with some effort. And the reason that it's not very easy is that the statements are a little difficult to understand, and they're also pretty lengthy. Now here we have another parajumble. Let's take a look at this one. We're saying women may prioritize cooking because they feel they alone are responsible for mediating a toxic and unhealthy food system. Now, I don't really know what the topic is. This could be the starter, although it doesn't really look like it because it doesn't announce the topic. So we say that it is a follower. Option 2 says food is commonly framed through the lens of individual choice. You can choose to eat healthily. This seems like a general statement which could be our topic. So we would say that this may be the starter. Now we have some clues in statement 3. This is particularly so in a neoliberal context where the state has transferred responsibility for food to individuals. When we say this is particularly so, we could be referring to 2. That food is an individual choice. You have to choose to eat healthily. This is particularly so in a neoliberal context. But there is something that worries me here, 2 does not really have any political references. So for now, I will say that 2 and 3 are a possible link, but I'm not very sure about this. So let's move on to statement 4. The individualized framing of choice appeals to a popular desire to experience agency. Now, we should be able to see that 2 and 4 are definitely connected. 2 talks about food being framed through the lens of individual choice. 4 also refers to individualized framing. So I can be pretty sure that 2 and 4 form a link. Now here, there is still some part that we need to figure out. So can we look for other clues? Now when we read 4, it says that the individualized framing of choice appeals to a popular desire, but draws away from the structural obstacles that stratify individual food choices. Now, even if you don't understand what structural obstacles are, basically it's trying to say that there are barriers to individuals making food choices. Individuals cannot simply decide what they want to eat because there are larger obstacles that they cannot overcome. Now, if I compare 3 and 4, I should be able to say that because the state does not take responsibility, therefore these structural obstacles are probably a little difficult to overcome. Now this is purely a logical connection. You'd have to be able to say that 3 and 4 are connected because they make sense in this way. But if you're not able to see this link, then this becomes a pretty difficult question to solve. So let me just explain this point one more time. Structural obstacles are going to be more difficult to overcome because the state will not take responsibility in the neoliberal context. So now we finally have the politics coming in. If we are able to figure this out, then we can link 4 and 3 together. So now we have 2, 4 and 3. We have only 1 to place now. Let's take a look at all the statements and decide what to do with 1. So we know that 2, 4 and 3 are connected. Now if I look at 1, it really does not link to any other statement. It talks about women prioritizing cooking. So what do we do in such a situation? We put that sentence at the very end. And that's exactly what we have done. So the correct sequence is 2, 4, 3, 1. There are a lot of obstacles in framing this sequence. It's difficult to understand certain statements. And the last link between 4 and 3 is also a little hazy. But in the end, you still have to figure out the sequence from the clues that are given to you. There is really no other choice. And since it is a para-jumble, you should always give it a shot. Let's move on to the next question. Now here we have a summary question. So as usual, we're going to read the paragraph, we're going to figure out our main points, and then we're going to evaluate our options. So the first thing that is being said is that some of the earliest cities were organized along egalitarian lines, which means that there was no class distinction really. People were more or less equal. So we identify this as our first point. Then it says that in some regions, there were no temples and palaces. They emerged later, but they weren't there for a period of time. But then, even when the temples and palaces emerged, there is simply no evidence of a class of administrators or any other sort of ruling stratum. So this is our second point. Regardless of whether there were temples or palaces in certain cities, there is no evidence that there was a ruling class. So again, these hierarchical class distinctions weren't there. So why are we talking about history? The last sentence tells us why. Far from resigning us to inequality, the picture that is now emerging about humanity's past may open our eyes to egalitarian possibilities. So it's trying to say that a lot of us might feel that inequality is a part of life, but when you look upon history and you realize that some cities were actually egalitarian, it kind of gives you hope. It lets you consider possibilities that you might not otherwise have considered. So with this in mind, let's look at our options. The first option says, contrary to our assumption that urban settlements have always involved hierarchical political and administrative structures, ancient cities were not organized in this way. Option 1 actually looks pretty good at first glance, but there is a problem. We're not saying that in general ancient cities were not hierarchical. We are saying some of the earliest cities were egalitarian. So option 1 is a generalization of the evidence. That is why it cannot be our answer. Option 2 says that we now have evidence in support of the existence of an egalitarian urban life in some ancient cities, which is exactly what we want, where political and civic organization were far less hierarchical. So option 2 looks pretty decent, we should retain it. Again, there is no option we have found so far that covers X, Y and Z in enough detail. But again, usually there is no perfect option, so we keep 2 and we move on to option 3. The emergence of a class of administrators and ruling stratum transformed the egalitarian urban life to the hierarchical civic organizations of today. This is a completely different story. Nowhere does the passage say that the emergence of a ruling class transformed the ancient cities. It just says that there is no evidence of a ruling class. So option 3 goes far beyond the scope of this passage. We eliminate it. Option 4 says the lack of hierarchical administration in ancient cities can be deduced by the absence of religious and regal structures. But if you look at why, it says that even when there were temples and palaces, some cities still did not have a ruling class. So option 4 is a little distorted. So we eliminate it. Our answer is definitely option 2. Here we have another summary question. So we're going to identify our main points and then we're going to take a look at the options, just like we did earlier. Now this is a little more difficult to understand unless you're used to reading about technology. Personally, for me, it was a little challenging. So I tried to simplify it as far as possible. The first point that is being made here is that a lot of debates about behavioral control that are happening in the context of big data are reminiscent of Cold War era anxieties. So that is the first point that we have put down. After that, it talks about a specific book. But then instead of quoting Han or whatever he has said in the book, let's try to figure out the point that is generally being made. What is it saying? That there is a fear that digital age has not liberated us but exposed us by offering our private lives to machine learning algorithms. So instead of freeing us, the digital age has actually exposed our private lives to these algorithms, which can obviously crunch a lot of data in a limited time, and then that data could be used for multiple purposes. And the last point that is being made, which is pretty important, is that all of these concerns have actually inspired the recent argument, or it has highlighted the need to rediscover solitude and to disconnect. So this is the overall structure after simplification. Of course, we may not find an option that has all of these 3 points, but let's try our best. Now let's take a look at option 1. Rather than freeing us, digital technology is enslaving us by collecting personal information. So is there anything wrong with option 1? Well, the word enslaving is a little too extreme. The passage does talk about brainwashing, manipulation, repression. It also talks about online targeting, polarization, but enslaving is going too far. The other bit is that it really doesn't capture point why well. It doesn't really say how the digital age has exposed our private lives and offered it to these machine learning algorithms. So option 1 is not really a good summary. We eliminate it. Option 2 says, with big data making personal information freely available, now this is our point why, the debate on the nature of freedom and the need for privacy has resurfaced. This is our point Z. So we should retain option 2. Let's look at option 3. Now option 3 talks about the Cold War, but this is a minor point. This is just the first point. It doesn't really talk about how the digital age has compromised our privacy. So option 3 definitely cannot be a summary. The summary has to capture the main point and also the key supporting ideas. So we eliminate option 3. Now option 4 says the notion of freedom and privacy is at stake in a world where artificial intelligence is capable of influencing behavior through data gathered online. Now, option 4 actually looks pretty good. I had a slightly difficult time eliminating it. The notion of freedom and privacy is at stake could possibly be equated to point Z. But after that, when it says that artificial intelligence is capable of influencing behavior, although it might be inferentially true, what we are saying is that instead of freeing us, the digital age has exposed our private lives. So option 4 does not really capture that point in the same way as it is stated in the passage. I know that it's a pretty minor flaw, but if I compare 2 and 4, option 4 is not as good as option 2. And so in the end, I would say with some reluctance that we should eliminate option 4 and select option 2 as our answer. Now here we have a parajumble question. We're going to solve this using the sort link sequence strategy. We're going to read a sentence. We're going to decide whether it's a starter or a follower. Let's get started. The first sentence here talks about the history of the word cheer. So this could possibly be the starter. Let's say that for now and let's move on. Now here we are saying that translations of the Bible into the vernacular languages expanded the noun cheer into the more abstract cheerfulness. Now we're talking about expanding that word. So I know for sure that 2 has to appear somewhere after 1. But I don't know whether these two sentences are linked. Can we put them side by side? So for now, we will just say that we need to create a sequence in which 1 appears somewhere before 2. Now let's look at the third statement. When you take on a cheerful expression, no matter what the state of your soul, your cheerfulness moves into the self. So here we are linking the cheerfulness to the self. So I would say that 3 is very likely the starter, because after 3, it is very easy to place 1. The trajectory of cheerfulness through the self is linked to the history of the word cheer. So in 1, we are tracing the path of linking self to the word cheer, whereas the third one is simply introducing that concept. So we say that 3 is the starter, most likely. 1 is going to follow 3. So this becomes our first link. And let's take a look at option 4 now. People in the medieval Canterbury tales have a piteous or a sober cheer. Cheer is an expression and a body part, and it continues. What I would notice about this option is that it talks about people in the medieval Canterbury tales. We're going back to history. So I should be able to link 4 to 1 because 1 is also talking about the history of the word cheer. So I can say that my second link is going to be 1 and 4. So now 3, 1 and 4 form a sequence. We have already figured out that 2 has to appear somewhere after 1. So our sequence is almost done, but let's take a look at all the sentences once more. So what do we have so far? We have 3, 1 and 4 in a sequence. Now we already have 3, 1 and 4 in a sequence. So what do we do with 2? Of course, we can decide that there's no other space for it, so we can place 2 at the end. So the correct sequence is 3, 1, 4, 2. But another way of looking at it is that 2 also talks about the historical trajectory of the word cheer, and it talks about expanding cheer into cheerfulness. So in that way also it makes sense after 4. Not a very easy question, but can be solved with some effort.
Let's have a look at the first set over here. The first set, what I see is this kind of diagram over here, which is a very common type of question which you must have seen earlier also. You know, during your practice over the years, CAT also has asked a couple of times such questions. So this type of diagram should not be a new thing for you. We can see that there is a warehouse, so we can read what they're talking about. Every day a widget supplier supplies widgets from the warehouse. So this is the warehouse from where he's supplying to 4 locations A, B, C, D, which you can see have been given over here. The daily demand for widgets in each location is uncertain and independent of each other. So at every location, the demand is not necessarily certain, and it is obviously independent. So it does not depend, A does not depend on how much B has asked for, and B does not depend on what C has asked for, and so on, right? Now, let's read this very, very carefully, what they have told. Demands and corresponding probability values in parentheses are given against each location A, B, C, D in the given figure. So let me just explain that to you for one location, say for location A. Location A, the demand for 50 widgets is 40% and demand for 70 widgets is 60%. That means there is no other demand because 40% and 60% become 100%. So you can have either a demand of 50 or you can have a demand of 70. No other demand is possible, right? That's the first part. And let's see. So that's what they will also explain. The lines in the figure connecting to the location warehouse represent two-way roads connecting these places with distance in kilometers shown besides the line. So if I have to go from W to B, the distance would be 10 units, W to C, it will be 12 units, and so on for different places. Now, let's read very carefully. The distance in both directions along the roads are equal. Obviously, if you're going from W to B and B to W, the distance will be equal. For example, the road from A to B and B to A, both is 6 kilometers long. That is this one they're talking about. Fair enough. Every day, the supplier gets the information about the demand values of the 4 locations and creates travel routes that start from the warehouse and ends at a location after visiting all the locations exactly once. So all the locations are exactly once visited. That means every day there has to be a demand from A, B, C, D, definitely from all 4 of them. What the demand will be will depend on what the route will depend on the demand. Let's see. While making the route plan, the supplier goes to the location in decreasing order of the demand. That means the highest will come first. Now, if the highest will come first, so whatever, the order could be any particular order depending on what the demand from those locations are, and the highest will come first and the lowest will come last, right? Also, while creating the route, the supplier can follow either the direct path if available from one location to another, or can take the path via the warehouse. So for example, if you are at B, you can either, and if you want to go to A after B, you can go directly B to A, or you can go B to W and then W to A, right? That either way you can go. If both the paths are available direct and via warehouse, the supplier will choose the path with the minimum distance. So obviously, if you're going from B to A, you will go directly, and hence you will have to travel only 6 kilometers. You will not do 10 plus 5, 15, right? So those are the things which we have to remember. Those are the kind of rules for this set. Once we understand the rules, we shall now work on the questions. Let's have a look at the questions. Now, if the last location visited is A, then what is the total distance covered in the route in kilometers? So here they've already told us that the last location is A, and hence we have to find the total distance. Fair enough. So we have to find the first 3 locations based on A being the last location. What would be the demand from A, and so on. If the total number of widgets delivered in the day is 250 units, then what is the total distance covered? So here they had given one condition, here one more condition. So 2 questions are starting with if. What is the chance that the total number of widgets delivered is 260 units and the route ends at B? So 2 conditions over here. The widgets also have to be 260, we have to end also at B, and we want to find the percentage. That means we'll have to use the probability thing over here. If the first location visited is A, so A is the first location, then what is the chance that the total distance covered is 40? So we want to start from A, cover 40 also, and we want to find the percentage. Well, this was a question where I messed up in the CAT. This was a question which I have got wrong, so you all can just pay attention very carefully. If A is not the first location to be visited in the route and the total route is 29 kilometers, then which of the following is a possible number of widgets delivered on that day? So again, 2 conditions. A is not the first location and the total distance is 29. Then what is the total number of widgets delivered out of these 4 options? Let's go ahead. Let's try and work with what we have. We are going to work per question because there's nothing else I can start solving right now. So we're going to work with the first question. If the last location visited is A, they've already told us that the last location visited is A, then what is the total distance covered in the route? Now in this case, the probabilities don't matter to us. So don't worry about the probabilities at all because they haven't asked for anything about chance or anything like that. So they are not going to look at the probabilities. Now, when can A come last? If its demand is less, right? If the demand is less. So demand for A cannot be 70 because if demand for A was 70, it will definitely become bigger than B and then D. So demand for A cannot be 70 and hence A will come last. So don't worry about the distance of A now because we don't know from where will we go to A. So let's forget that. So what will be the first location? It will have to be C because whatever the demand from C, whether it is 70 or 100, doesn't matter. C will come first because the demand will be highest from C and hence C will come first and distance for C will be 12 from the warehouse. Now from here we will go to B. Now if I go to B, what will happen? Again, if I'm going to B, B will have to be higher than D because then that 40 will not be there. So that 40 will not be there and 60 will be there. See, because if I take 40 for B, then what would happen? It would become lower than A and hence A could not be last then. Hence over here, B will be 60. So B will be second demand and the distance traveled will be 4. Then from B to D, I don't have a choice to go from B to A because they've told us A is last. B to D, the distance will be 12 and A obviously will take 50 ka demand. So B to D will be 12, distance 10 plus 2, 12 going via the warehouse. And then the last distance from D to A. D to A direct distance looks shorter, but that's not shorter, 8. The indirect distance is 2 plus 5, which is shorter. So 2 plus 5, 7. Lot of students would have rushed over here and taken this 8 and marked 36. The answer was 35. Also, it was a theta question, so hence, the chances of going wrong were higher. 35 is the distance and the answer for this question. Let's have a look at the next question. If the total number of widgets delivered in the day is 250 units, then what is the total distance covered in the route? So what I decided to do over here was actually work on the minimum and maximum which is required at each place. So at A, the minimum was 50, maximum 70. B was 40, 60, C was 70, 100 and D was 30, 50. And the minimum total would be 190 and the maximum was 280. Now understand, I want 250 widgets to be delivered. Now think logically. If you remove A, so means if you make A, if you don't take 70 for A, there is no way you can get a total of 250. The only way you can get 250 ka total is not taking 100 over here and instead of that taking 70. So not taking 100 from the maximum and from the others take the maximum and for minimum for C. That means I will have A at 70, B at 60, C at 70 and D at 50. Now the order becomes very obvious because I want to find the distance. Now A and C are both same 70, 70, but A is shorter from the warehouse. So we'll first go to A. So first we are going to A, distance will be 5. Now don't worry about the number of widgets and whatever the percentage, all that is not needed. 5. From A we'll go to C. For C the distance will be 17. You can't go via B. They have said either there is a direct route or via the warehouse. Remember that. Then after C that will be B, again just based on these totals, that is 60. So we will have distance of 4 from C, and from B to D we had done that earlier also, 12. The total distance will be 38. So I thought the first two questions were very doable. Yes, theta questions, maybe students were not able to figure out what they were looking for, but I thought that first two questions were straightforward. In fact, the third question also was pretty straightforward. What is the chance that the total number of widgets is 260 and we are ending at B? In fact, it's the same thing, ending at B, which means I have to make B the least. So I cannot take the 60 and I want 260. So you can now check easily 70 plus 100 plus 50 and 40. So if you take these values 70, 40, 100, 50, you will get 260 ka total, right? And now I just have to look at the order. Obviously C will come first. After C there will be A. So you are taking 100 now. Distance is not important because we have already, they have not asked anything about distance. So don't worry about distance. So you are going to C and you are going to take 100. Okay, so you are going to take this probability 7 by 10. Next A. For A you are going to take 70. So you are going to take this probability 6 by 10. Then D. For D we are going to take 50. So we are going to take this probability 6 by 10 again. And for B we will be taking 40, that is this probability 30%. So what will be the probability, the chance of getting the answer? For this, for C, the first probability was 7 by 10, 70%, that is why 7 by 10, then 6 by 10 for A, 6 by 10 for D and 3 by 10 for B. If you multiply everything, you will get 756 upon 10 raised to 4. Want to convert it into a percentage, so multiply by 100. 2 zeros will cut out, answer will become 7.56%, which will be my fourth option. Again, I thought this was a pretty doable question because that 260 made my life very easy. The numbers were very favorable. Now, the fourth question is the one which I also made a mistake in the exam. So that's what I'm trying to clarify. What was the issue? I was so sure that the answer was 3.24, but well, that's the mistake when you make when you rush up a few things. If the first location visited from the warehouse is A, so they have told us this, that definitely the first location is A, then what is the chance of the total distance being 40? Now let's pay attention very carefully. How do we reach 40? Okay, so if the first location is A, which means I will travel 5 first over here. Okay, now and if the first has to be A has to take 70 ka requirement. Now after that obviously there will be C. So that is also very obvious. From A I'll have to go to C, and C will also ask for a requirement of 70. To A I travel 5, then to C I'll travel 17. So I have already traveled 22. I need to travel a total of 40. So I have to travel 18 more. Now there are two choices I have. I can go to B first or D first because I don't know their requirements. Now just think, if I go to B first, it will be 4 plus 12, that will be 16 more. Look at this, if I go to B, it will be 4 and then 12 to D, which will be 16. But if I go to D first, it will be 6 plus 12, 18, and that will give me 20. So the only way I can get 40 can be from C to D. So which means for D, I need a higher widget requirement than B. So D will take a requirement of 50. And this will become 6 kilometers, and last will be B, and B will take the lower requirement of 40, and the distance traveled will be 12, so 40 I got, 40 kilometers I got. After this, this is what I thought. I just thought that this is the route I have to follow, and hence my probability will come up by multiplying all of them. So for A70 it is 6 by 10, so 6 by 10 into 3 by 10 into, for this was 6 by 10 into 3 by 10, and I thought this is straight 3.24, mark the answer second option, but that was incorrect. The question was on Bayes theorem. What was that? Basically they are saying if you are going to A first and you are traveling 40, what is the probability of traveling 40? They have not said that you are traveling 40. So basically after traveling to A, we definitely know we have to travel to C. After that we had two choices. You could travel to B, or you could travel to D, or you could travel to D, or you could travel to B. This is the choice which is favorable for us, which is giving us 40 kilometers. The remaining all choices don't give us 40 kilometers. Right? The remaining all choices don't give us 40 kilometers. If you will have to actually put down all the remaining 4 choices. There are 4 choices. Now pay attention. A and C still remain as it is. So that will not really worry. So in fact, these two are going to anyway cut out. Your probability will be decided by this only. A and C remain as it is. You could go to D and B, which is the definite case, or which are the other cases. You could go to B after A and C, but over there can be 2 cases. You can choose A, C, then you can choose B with 60. So B, let's call it as B1 and then D. And then D also I can have 2 choices over here. I can choose D1 or D2, because once I have chosen D, this as 60, D can be any one, 50 or 30. So I have 2 choices, D1. Then same way AC, B2, D1, AC, B1, D2. No, B1, D2 is not possible because B1, D1 is not possible. B1, D2 is possible. So these 4 cases when you take, you get exactly 100% and you get 18 upon 100. Answer turns out to be 18%. Slightly difficult. The language was difficult. People had to think of Bayes theorem. I thought that this question kind of made this set. Obviously, a lot of students would have got this wrong. A lot of people would have marked 3.24. But well, it was an interesting question. You should have thought of this. Let's look at the last question. The last question may be slightly difficult, but definitely possible to do. If A is not the first location to be visited in the route and the total route is 29 kilometers. So if A is not first, obviously C will come first. So 12 kilometers already done over there. Then I'm going to B. Obviously, you can say why B, but you can figure out that you cannot get 29 by going any other way. So B you will travel 4. Then to A, because A is not last. Then 6, because if you had gone back to A from C, the distance would become too much already. And anyway, that would give you only 50. So B comes first, then to A, which is 6, and then to D, 7. That is the only way we get 29 kilometers. So we have done 12, 4, 6, 7. Now pay attention. That's the only way you can get 29, C, B, A, D. Now C can, if you're getting C first, it can be 70 or 100 because A is not first anyway. So C can be, you can have a demand of 70 or 100. From B to be second, B will have to be a demand of 60 only. For A, the demand will have to be 50. And for D, the demand will be 30 or 50. Which means if I look at all the possibilities which I can get for the total over here, I can get 70 plus 60 plus 50 plus 30. That will be 210. Which was there in the options. You should ideally just mark this and left and gone ahead, but just showing it to you for now. Next could be possible was 230, 70, 60, 50, 50, 230. Then 100, 60, 50, 30 would give you 240 and 100, 60, 50, 50 will give you 260. So these 4 possibilities were there, out of which only one possibility existed in the option, which was 210, and that is why third option is your answer. I would put this as a level B set. This was definitely not my first set. I thought there were 2 sets definitely easier than this set in the test scenario. Let's have a look at the next set. The next set I thought was slightly difficult in terms of the amount of data, and there was some confusion about whether you should make a Venn diagram or not, or should you make a table, and hence it was a slight confusion. There were a couple of questions which were straightforward. Maybe the first 2 questions could have been done very easily. First 2 or 3 questions could have been done very easily. So they're talking about a specialty supermarket sells 320 products. Each of these products was either a cosmetic or a nutrition product. So there is either cosmetic or nutrition. Then each of these products was either a foreign product or a domestic product. Till here everything was okay. Each of these products had at least one of the two approvals, FDA or EU. Now students, a lot of would have missed out that they could have had both also. Obviously, once they read the statements, they realized that both also was possible. So for FDA, EU, we had to think like a Venn diagram, but for the others, it was not like a Venn diagram. For the others, it was either domestic or whatever, there was only two data, domestic or foreign, and nutrition or cosmetic. So let's read the other points which have been given. The equal number of domestic and foreign products, that's pretty straightforward, 160, 160. Half of the domestic were FDA approved cosmetic products. So they were FDA approved. Now when they say they are FDA approved, they could be FDA approved or both also. Hence this points became very important. None of the foreign products had both the approvals. So at least in foreign products, both did not exist only. But in domestic, 60 domestic products had both the approvals, and you will realize most of the questions were around this part. There were 140 nutrition products, half of them were foreign products. That was also okay. There were 200 FDA products totally, 70 of them. When I say again 200 FDA, there could be FDA or both. 70 of them were foreign products and 120 of them were cosmetic. Let's take all this data and try and answer the questions. Questions, once again, you got the data around. I thought question 1 and 2 were very straightforward, could have been easily got. The remaining was slightly difficult. Okay, in fact, maybe even the third was straightforward. Not so much, but 1 and 2 definitely were very easy. Let's have a look at it. Now, this is the table which I have created, not a table like a box I have created, where there is cosmetic, nutrition, foreign, domestic on the 4 points, and 320 was the total. So that's, I've just put that down. Now, let's read each point very carefully. Equal number of domestic and foreign products. So foreign is 160, domestic is also 160, our total out of 320. Half the domestic were FDA approved. Now, if you notice all the points when you read, they spoke about FDA, they didn't speak about EU at all. So what I'm going to do is when I write FDA, I mean FDA and both. So the balance automatically becomes only EU. So if you're thinking like a Venn diagram, it is FDA. So if I draw a Venn diagram, this is FDA, this is EU. So this whole thing is FDA, this is both, and this is only EU obviously. So think that way. Be careful and think that way. We'll just clear that out. Now, half of the domestic products were FDA approved cosmetic products. So where is FDA approved cosmetic products, domestic and cosmetic? That means we are talking about this box, right? Half of them, half of the domestic products out of the 160, 180 were domestic approved cosmetic. That doesn't mean that in this box I cannot have more things. I can have cosmetic which are not FDA approved and so on. But this is FDA, so they mean FDA or both. This is not only FDA, right? None of the foreign products had both the approvals, while 60 domestic products had both the approvals. So over here, both is 0, which made my life really easy for this part at least. Both is 0. But over here, both is 60. Here, this is again for cosmetic and nutrition. That is why I just put it down over here. So you can't say out of these 80, this is 60. No, that is incorrect. There are 140 nutrition products. Half of them are foreign products. So nutrition, there is 140. So automatically cosmetic becomes 180. Half of them are foreign. So out of this 140, 70 are foreign. So automatically 70 become domestic. If these 70 are foreign, then over here this becomes 90 because the total is 160. So this will become 90 and this will also become 90, right? So we got these 4 values also of each box. So we've got each box got 4 values. Now next part, there are 200 FDA products that I'm not using right now. 70 of them were foreign. Now 70 FDA products are foreign. So now when I say FDA 70, anyway both is 0. So automatically everything else becomes EU. So EU becomes 110 over here. Pay attention very carefully. They're saying there are 200 FDA products that I'm not using right now. 70 of them are foreign products. So 70 FDA products are foreign. EU becomes 110. And 120 of them are cosmetic products. So over here, FDA becomes 130 because this is 70. So this will become 130 because total FDA was 200. And now let's read this part. 120 of them were cosmetic products. What do you mean by that? So only FDA becomes, I have not even used this 120, just hold on to that. Only FDA over here becomes 70 because 60 is both. FDA is 130, 60 is both. So only FDA becomes 70. and only EU will become 30, right? So I have not used this 120 at all. I maybe don't even need that. Let's see, because I think we more or less figured that 120 of them were cosmetic. So total of cosmetic was 120. Yeah. So we can get this. Yeah. We'll get FDA over here as 40. We have used that now. So 120 of them are cosmetic. So FDA over here will become 40 because FDA over here is 80. Now remember, when I say FDA over here is 40, they are only FDA only, because there is both is anyway 0. So FDA over here will become 30. We still don't have the split up of EU for both these boxes. So basically in these 4 boxes, I needed to figure out only FDA if possible. So this anyway is only FDA. But this FDA is not only FDA, it is FDA plus both. So let's go ahead now. Now let's try and answer the questions on this. How many foreign products were FDA approved cosmetic? So we are talking about this box, FDA approved cosmetics. 40. Straightforward question. We had easily got this data. Once you'd understood what it is, we've not really done too much on this. We got this number pretty easily. Next one. How many cosmetics products did not have FDA approval? So cosmetic not having FDA approval. So if 40 have FDA approval, how many don't have? So if you notice over here, 50 will not have FDA approval over here, because there were totally 90 products over here. So 50 don't have. Over here, 80 have out of the total of 90. So 10 don't have FDA approval. Now when I say don't have, they automatically mean only EU, but does not matter. So this is 50 do not have FDA approval. Over here 10 do not have FDA approval. Answer becomes the 4th option, which is 60. Again, pretty straightforward. Third question onwards, they were slightly difficult because you have to start thinking a little bit more. It was not straight from the data. Which among the following best represents the number of domestic cosmetic products that have both the approvals? Now this is anyway 80. Now this both is 60. Now this question, if somebody was smart and wanted to take a little bit chance, could have taken a little bit chance. Both ka total for cosmetic and nutrition is 60. Which means if you think logically, this is out, this is out. At most 80, at most 70 is out, because both anyway over here is 60. So 70 and 80 are out. It could be at most 50 or at most 60. Because 60 is possible, and I'm just thinking, can this number be 60? So from here, FDA 80, can both be 60? Yes. Doesn't look like, kind of that anything else will be spoiled because of that. Any values will go wrong. So I thought 60 was possible, and hence took a chance and marked that 60, and turned out to be correct. And now, after that later, I thought, why at least 10? So then you realize why at least 10, because over here, FDA 50, right? The total only FDA is 70. Right, total only FDA is 70. If you try and draw the Venn diagram, you will realize that at least 10, you cannot have less than 10 over here. In this value, you cannot have less than 10, because if you try making it 0, you can't put all 60 over here, no, because this is only 50. So maximum both which can go over here is 50. So 10 that is over here, maximum can be 50. So 10 will have to go minimum over here. So minimum 10, maximum 60. So your minimum can be 0, maximum can be 60. So answer is 10, 60, which is the first option. But if you are slightly smart, you could have taken a chance and marked the first option. From 4th question, I thought they were slightly difficult. 4th and 5th question was slightly more difficult. If 70 cosmetic products did not have EU approval. Now, when they say did not have EU approval, which means FDA was only FDA is 70. Now understand, when I say do not have EU, that means this part is 70, only FDA is 70. Now this is only FDA, we know only 40 anyways, because here that is both is 0. So only FDA is 40 over here. So the only FDA over here will become 30. Now only FDA over here was 70 for both of them together, which means only FDA over here now becomes what? 10. Sorry, both becomes 10, because only will become, both over here will become 50. So the both over here become 10. Because that's what they are. How many nutrition products had both the approvals? So pay attention very carefully. Obviously, both, how many nutrition have both over here is 0 and here is 10. I'll go through this again if you want. Only FDA over here turns out to be 30, because 70 minus 40 is 30. Therefore, both over here became 50, because 80 was FDA total, so both became 50. Both of 60 was therefore totally for both of them, for that is including for cosmetic and nutrition. Therefore, both for nutrition became only 10, and that is your answer, which is the first option. Let's go to the last question. If 50 nutrition products did not have EU approval, now which means again over here only FDA is 50. Now only FDA over here is 30 because anyway here there is no combination, only FDA is 30. So only FDA becomes 20. What is the question then? How many domestic products did not have EU approval? That means only FDA over here. We want to find only FDA over here. Now if this only FDA is 20 and only FDA total is 70, so therefore only FDA over here will be 50, and that is my answer for this question. As I had said, the last 2 questions were slightly difficult. First 3 questions or the first 2 questions were definitely doable, yes, but for that you had to already create the chart or the table. So somebody could have done this type of table, somebody could have done maybe a table with a 3 by 3 table, that condition table, but this is also a pretty comfortable table to solve with. Let's have a look at the next set. The next set talks about what a few salesmen were employed to sell a particular product among housing holds in various housing complexes. On each day, a salesman is assigned to visit one housing complex. So he's going to visit one complex. Once a salesman enters a housing complex, he can meet any number of households in the time available. So he can meet as many houses he can go to for the time available he has. However, if a household makes a complaint against a salesman, then he must leave the housing complex immediately and cannot meet any other household that day. That means if there's a complaint, then he leaves immediately and he will stop working for that day basically. A household may buy any number of items or may not buy any number of trisec items which they are selling. The salesman needs to record a total number of trisec items sold as well as the number of households met in each day. So every day, how many households did he visit and how many items were sold is what he's kind of noting down. The success rate of a salesman is defined as the ratio of the number of items sold to the number of households met on that day. So items sold upon number of households met is the success ratio. They are talking about 3 salesmen, Tori, Hockley and Lahore, and these 3 people they are talking about on 2 particular days are given below. And some data on that has been given, 4 points have been given. Over the 2 days, all 3 of them met the same number of households and each of them sold a total of 100 items. So everybody sold a total of 100 items and everybody visited the same number of households. On both days, Lahore met the same number of households and sold the same number of items. So for Lahore, what do we know? He has met the same number of households and sold the same number of items. That means total 100 items were sold. So he has obviously on day 1 sold 50, day 2 sold 50. Hockley could not sell any item on the second day, right? So which means Hockley on day 2 sold 0, on day 1 sold 100, and he met only one, as the first household he met on that day complained against him. That means on day 2 he has visited only one household. We still don't know what he has visited on day 1. But basically total minus 1. Whatever is the total for everybody, minus 1 is what he has visited. Tori met 30 households on the second day, 30 more households on second day than on the first day. So on second day, the number is 30 more than day 1. And a point is given where Tori's success rate has been compared to Lahore's success rate of the first day, which was 75%, double on day 1 and 75% on day 2. With these points, let's try and have a look at the questions. So questions spoke about what was the total number of households met by all 3 on day 1. By the way, I don't know whether how many people realize this, and obviously you should have not thought of it in the test, but if you were thinking of it later, Tori has been formed from the word Rohit, Hockley from the word Kohli, and Lahore from the word Rahul. So whichever examiner was making the set was maybe a cricket fan and thought of the 3 Indian teams openers' name. Yeah, let's continue. How many trisec items were sold by Tori on first day? So that's the second question. How many households did Lahore meet on the second day? So I'm basically looking at the questions and thinking if I get the table where day 1, day 2, who has visited how many items, households and how many items that they sold, I think I should be able to answer the questions very, very easily. Let's try and make the table. The table was a very standard table, day 1, day 2, visited, sold, and the 3 names, Tori, Lahore and Hockley. Let's start. On both days, Lahore met the same number of households and sold the same number of items. So I started by Lahore taking the visited number of households as X and X, and items sold were 50 and 50 because we know the total was 100. That was told to us in the question over here, right at the start. Next one. Tori met 30 more households on second day than on the first day. Now total number of households visited by both of them together is 2x. by all of them basically on day 1 and day 2 together they have visited 2x. Now from 2x, if he wants a difference of 30 for Tory, it will have to be x minus 15 and x plus 15. Understand the total is 2x. It saves you from using one more variable. So x minus 15 on day 1 and x plus 15 on day 2 for Tory. Next one, Hockley could not sell any items on the second day because the first household he met on that day complained against him. So on day 2 he has visited only one household, sold 0 items. So day 1 he has sold 100 items and he has visited 2x minus 1 households. So we have got that also. Now let's continue further. We are using one more variable y for the number of items sold by Tory on day 1 and therefore 100 minus y on day 2. Now using this, I am going to make my equations using point number 5, going to make my equations and try and get the value of y and x, because I have 2 conditions and I have 2 variables. So throughout the question, I have only y and x as 2 variables and I have 2 conditions. So I should ideally be able to solve them simultaneously. So let's look at it. Success rate y upon x minus 15 for day 1. So for day 1 for Tory, the success rate will be y upon x minus 15, which is twice of the success rate of Lahore on day 1, which is 50 upon x. By the way, Lahore has the same success rate on both the days. So this is twice of 50 upon x, and second day 100 minus y upon x plus 15, that is using this day 2 for Tory. 100 minus y upon x plus 15 is 3 upon 4 of 50 upon x. That is day 2. Try simplifying it as far as possible. I'm trying to eliminate y. So y is equal to 100 into x minus 15 cross multiplying upon x. That gives me my first equation in terms of y. Let's do the same thing for the second one. 100 minus y is equal to 150 into x plus 15 upon 4x. Bringing y on the right side and everything else on the left side. So 100 minus 150 into x plus 15 upon 4x is y. Simplifying that further a little bit, 400x minus 150 into x plus 15 upon 4x is y. Equate this with this to give us an equation in terms of only x. So again cross multiplying, xx cuts out in the denominator. As soon as I equate them, xx will cut out. So I'll cross multiply after that. So we'll get 2 into 4 into x minus 15. Where did I get the 2 from? I've started also divide. So I'll just write it over here if you want. 100 into x minus 15 upon x. So I not only cut this x, but I also divided by 50. This is 52 58 and 53 and then solve this equation, cross multiplied and solve to give us the value of x. X comes out to be 25. Yes, the solving can be slightly longer. X will come out to be 25 and put it over here. Any one of the places, this is the easiest place where you could put it to find y. Solve there, y comes out to be 40. So 25 minus 15 was 10 upon 25 and solve that. That comes out to be 40, y is 40. Put everything in the table, replace everything in the table with x as 25 and y as 40. So replacing everything in the table, we get 10 over here, 40 over there, 40, 60, 25, 25 and 49. We got all the values in the table. Question should be straightforward. Even if you took a good 8 minutes to reach here, maybe even 10 minutes. The questions might not take even more than 1 or 2 minutes and you should easily be able to solve 5 questions. Let's look at the questions. First question, what was the total number of households met by all 3 on first day? 10 plus 25 plus 49, answer is 84. Very, very simple, right? Once the table is done, all the questions are going to be straightforward. How many items were sold by Tory on day 1? So Tory on day 1, number of items sold is 40. That's your answer. Next one. How many households will Lahore meet on the second day? So Lahore on second day has met exactly 25 households. They have given the options in such a way it looks as if some of the values were not going to be found out, but it was a very straightforward thing. Answer is the second option. We got that easily, between 21 and 29. Next one, how many households did Tory meet on the first day? So Tory on first day has met only 10 households. That is 10 or less. That will be the third option, 10 or less. Next one, which of the following statements is false? Now this is one question which everybody should have got even without thinking. The first statement is obviously false. Among the 3, Tory had the highest success rate on the second day. Now think, what had they said about Tory? They had told that Tory has, if you remember properly, on day 1, Tory has twice the success rate of Lahore, and on day 2 he has 3/4 the success rate of Lahore, and Lahore on both the days is same. So obviously Tori on day 1 is more than day 2, and that means statement 1 is definitely false. I don't even need the table for this. I can check with the table, but among the 3, Tori had the highest success rate on second day is not possible. I don't even want to read the remaining statements. First statement is false because they said which of the statement is false, and hence the answer is the first one. Clearly, that's your answer. So according to me, this is a set which I would have, this is my second set I would have done on the day of the cat, out of the 4 sets which I'm doing. This would be my second set, and it was definitely possible to do it. You just had to have the patience to take those 2 equations and solve them, and once you had that, you should be able to get the questions very, very easily. Let's have a look at the next set. This set maybe was one of the easiest set of slot 2. A very, very typical DI set with some values given. So basically, on the most, you had to see approximately 12 values for the 2. There were obviously 2 plots. So the 2 plots show data for 4 companies named ABCD over 3 years, 2019, 20, and 21. So 12 values over here and 12 values in the next plot. The first plot shows the revenue and cost. So over here we have revenue versus cost. So revenue on the x-axis, cost on the y-axis. So just to give you an example, suppose if I look at a value like this, okay, so C for 2021, its revenue will be exactly 100. So its revenue will be exactly 100, while its cost will be exactly 30. So that is how each table, each value over here is interpreted. Now, let's go ahead further. There was one more plot over here. The second plot shows the number of employees employed by the company, that is the employees' strength at the start of each of these 3 years, as well as the number of new employees hired each year. So for example, for company A in 2019, they had 150 employees and they hired 20 more, right? Which means in 2019 and they should have had 170, but maybe some of them left them, and hence in 2020 when we will look at A, maybe the number will not come up to 170. In fact, it is going lower than 170. You can easily, in fact, it is going lower than 150 also. So you can make out that from here, right? So again, obviously that has been explained over here with an example and all that. So from there, we will come to know about how many people quit. So we basically had 2 plots. One spoke about revenue and cost, one about number of employees. Let's have a look at the first question. The first question talks about considering all the 3 years, which company has the highest annual profit. So when they say considering all 3 years, we're talking about sum, the total of all the values. Now, profit will be nothing but revenue minus cost. So revenue is on the x-axis, cost is on the y-axis. Revenue minus cost will be your profit. So let's start with 2019 and let's start looking at the profit values. So this blue thing is 2019. So if I look at A, what are the values we have? 90 minus 85. 90 is my revenue and 85 is the cost. That gives me the profit of 5. Same way I look at company B in 2019, that will be 100 minus 75, which is 25. Company C accordingly will be 25 minus 20, which is 5. And company D will be 50 minus 40, which is 10. That is 2019 profit for each company. We'll have to do that for all 3 years. So just quickly going through that. 2020 for A will be 90 minus 65, 25. 90 minus 40 is 50. 70 minus 60 is 10. 20 minus 50 is minus 30. There's a loss over here in company D. That's, I think, one of the only places where there is a loss. 60 minus 30 is 30. That is 2021. 30 minus 30 is 0, no profit, no loss. And 100 minus 30 is 70. And 70 minus 70 is 0. So now if I look at the total profit which I want. So for company A, it will become 60. That is 5 plus 25 plus 30. Company B will be 75, 25 plus 50 plus 0. Company C will be 15 plus 70, which is 85. This 70 like really changed everything for C. Because of that, C became the highest profit and D was minus 20. So very obviously you can see C is the best answer, 85, which will be the first option. That's your answer for this question. So obviously there's some amount of time spent in doing all this, but we'll be able to use that data for other questions also. And hence this was, according to me, very easy. Definitely the set was also easy, and just picking up the values from the graph and putting them down over here does not take a lot of time. Next question, which of the 4 companies experienced the highest annual loss in any of the years? Now we know loss there is only once, that is only for company D, and there's only one loss. And in any of the years, which means we are talking about any 1 year, they're not talking about overall also. Anyway, overall also D. So there was no confusion also. Means even if you had not understood whether they are asking for a particular year or for total, the loss was only in company D. So answer will be the first option, company D. Let's look at the next question. The ratio of the company's annual profit to its annual cost is a measure of its performance. So profit to cost, right? What we are talking about, profit to cost. Which of the 4 companies has the lowest value of this ratio? So we want to find the lowest ratio. Now, what will happen for company A? And they're talking only about 1 year, 2019. So I've not taken the whole chart. 5 is the profit over a cost of 85. So 5 by 85 is 1 by 17. You can leave it as it is. If from your reciprocals you remember the value, great, 5.88%, you can just write it. Now, if I look at company B, it will be 25 by 75, right? 25 by 75, which is 1/3, which is 33.33. Now, for company C, it is 5 by 20, which is 1 by 4, which is 25%, right? 5 by 20, which is 1 by 4, 25%. And for company D, it is 10 by 40, which is also 1 by 4, which is also 25%. They want us to find the lowest. So lowest is clear, this 5.88, which will be company A, which will be the first option again. So again, a straightforward question there too. Let's look at the next one. Total number of employees lost in 2019 and 20. Now, what is the table talking about? Let's understand this properly. Now, if I look at company A 2019, what does these numbers figure out? What is this 150 and 20? So 150 on the x-axis and 20 on the y-axis. So employee strength at the start of 2019 was 150. 20 more people were hired is what they're telling us. Which means by the end, if nobody had left, there should have been 170 people. That's what they're telling us. We'll first finish off the table, get all the values in the table. Let's see. Now, company B, the values are what? 210 and 35. For company C, they are 325 and that is over here 325 and 45. And company D, they are 430, 400,30. So these are the values. Same way for 2020, there will be 145 and 35. 245 and 45, 325 and 40, 410 and 35. Company D is 150, 25, 250, 30, 325, 35 and 440. Now let's understand how to interpret this. So 2019, there should have been 170 people at the end, but next year start you're seeing only 145 people. So what happened in between? So definitely some people left. So from those 170, 25 people left and hence only we have 145 people over here. Same way 145 plus 35 should have been 180, but instead of 180 we have only 150, which means 30 people left. So they are talking about 2019 and 20. So 2019 for A, as I just explained to you, 25 people left, and for 2020 30 people left, so total 55 people left. Now let's look at same way for B. This should have been 245, and it is exactly 245, that means nobody left. So it is 0, and then 245 plus 45 should have been 290, but it's only 250. So 40 people left, so 0. Sorry, let's just go through that. 245 plus 45 is 290. 290 minus 250 is 40 people. So this should be 40, and this is also 40. Yeah, so that 40 people left in the next year. For B. Now let's talk about C. 325 plus 45 is 370, and next year there are only 325. So 45 people left for C, first case, and then again 40 people left. So 85 people left for C, and for D, similarly it will be 430 minus 410 is 20, and then 445 minus 400 is 45. So we have 65 people. What have they asked for? Total number of employees lost was least for which company? So least is clearly for B, 40. We can check again for B. What do we have? 245 minus 245 is 0. 245 plus 45 is 290. 290 minus 250 is 290 minus 250 is 40, and hence 40 answer is company B, which is the second option. So again, yes, it takes time maybe for this question, but again, we will have to use data from this question and the next question also. Profit per employee is the ratio of the company's profit to its employee strength. For this purpose, the employee strength in the year is the average of the employee strength at the beginning of the year and the beginning of the next year. In 2020, which of the 4 companies has the highest profit per employee? Now, we are talking about 2020 profits. So, we are first talking about only this part. We are talking only profits from here. So, what do we have A's profit as? A's profit is 25. That comes in my numerator. Where did I get that 147.5? We will have to take 145 and 150 and the average of both. So, I hope you know that when you're taking average of 145 and 150, you don't always have to add and divide by 2. You don't have to do 295 divided by 2. You can also subtract and divide by 2 and add it to the lower number. So, 5 divided by 2 is 2.5 and 145 plus 2.5 becomes 147.5. Much easier calculation. Now, let's just leave it. I don't know what is the answer. I don't want to get into that right now. For B, it will be profit will be 50 divided by 210 and, not 210, 245 and 250 average. That will again come out to be 247.5. Same logic. For C, it will be 10 divided by 325 and 325 average, which is 325. So, 10 divided by 325. And for D, no need to even do it because there was a loss and they are asking for which company is the profit highest. So, I'm not even wasting my time doing that calculation for D. C, we can see is very, very low. 10 out of 300 is 1 by 30. That's hardly 3%. And these both you can definitely make out as much more. So, C, so definitely out. So, let's not even look at that. Now, let's compare the other two, 25 upon 147.5 and 50 upon 247.5. I want to compare which is bigger. Now, if you look very carefully over here, what is happening? The numerator is doubling. Has the denominator doubled? Double of 147.5 should have been close to 295. So, the denominator has not doubled, but the numerator has doubled. So, definitely this is higher, right? My denominator is not doubling, but my numerator is doubling. So, this is definitely higher. So, hence my answer will be company B, which will be the first option, company B, right? Understand this very carefully that if you had cut this also, so if you had cut with 25 ones are, 25 twos are, and then cut with this 2, this will become 123 point something. And you would realize 1 upon 123 is definitely lower than 1 upon 140, higher than 1 upon 147.5. Whichever way you look at it, company B is your answer. You wanted to do it on the calculator, that was your choice. I would not use the calculator for such small things. According to me, definitely by far the easiest set of this slot, and this should have been your first set to attempt in this slot. Let's have a look at the first question. Now, the first question should have been at least a very familiar question. A couple of questions like this has been asked in last year and last year's CAT. So, at least in terms of familiarity, this question was not very difficult. So, I would not call it a C just because of that. Maybe a B, definitely not a A. So, when is anything raised to anything 1? So, when is A raised to B 1? That's what you have to start thinking first. So, obviously, A can be any value and B can be 0. And when I say A can be any value, at that time A should not be 0. That's the only condition you have. But clearly from the way the values are there, if B is 0, A will not be 0. So, when will B be 0? So, I will get x square minus 3x minus 10 is 0. So, I will get the factors as x minus 5 and x plus 2, not spending too much time solving it. 5 2s are 10 and minus 5 plus 2 is minus 3. So, therefore, x is 5 or x is minus 2. So, we have got two values already. So, my 5 and minus 2. So, that was one condition. When B is 0, I have two possible values for x, which can give me the whole answer as 1, right? Now, what is the other possibility? A can be 1 and B can be any value. A can be 1 and B can be any value. Now, let's think that for that part. So, if A was 1, x square minus 10 is 1. So, x square is 11. Clearly stop wasting your time over here because it will not be an integer because they are asking for integral solutions of x, right? So, x square is 11. So, x will be plus or minus root 11. So, no point wasting time over there, and hence this will not give me any solutions. Third condition will be when A is minus 1 and B has to be even. Let's think over here. If A is minus 1, what will I get? I'll get x square minus 10 is minus 1. So x square is 9, x is plus or minus 3. So I have two more solutions, but only thing I have to check is for both these solutions, am I getting b to be even? So b was x square minus 3x minus 10. Now, so x square, if I take x as 3, I'll get 9 minus 9 minus 10. So even though negative, but I'm getting an even value, which will give me 1 raised to anything. 1 raised to negative 10 will also come out to be 1 only. And hence, you will get, if this is 1, sorry, minus 1 raised to negative 10 will also come out to be 1 only. Base was minus 1, so minus 1 raised to minus 10 would become 1 upon minus 1 raised to 10, and then finally it will become 1 only. What about the other value, taking x as minus 3? So I'll get 9 plus 9. So here it didn't cut out, in fact. Yeah, here 9 plus 9 minus 10. So here 9 and 9 does not cut out. So 18 minus 10 is 8. Again, minus 1 raised to 8 will also be an 8 is even number. So minus 1 raised to 8 will also be 1. So hence we have finally 4 answers. X can be 5. It can be minus 2. It can be 3 or minus 3. Hence we have 4 solutions. So answer for this question was 4, theta question. Putting into a category wise, clearly algebra, quadratic equations, indices and surds, all that is used, and category would be definitely category B according to me. Let's have a look at the next question. The next question is a question on functions. I'm straight away jumping to what they've asked me to find. They've asked us to find f of g phi plus g of f phi, where the function g of x is very straightforward. So that was not going to be a problem. That means if I can find f of phi, whatever value I'll get for f of phi, finding g of f of phi will not be a problem. So g of f of phi, then I can find. If I get this, I should be able to get this. Same way, first I will have to worry about g of phi, which is so very easy. G of x is x square. So g of phi will be phi square, which is 25. So g of phi, so I've already found out over here. And next I want to find f of 25, which means my question is centered about finding the function for f of 25 I need and f of 5 I need. And what do I have for x? Let's start thinking there. I have f of x plus f of x minus 1. Minus 1 is 0, which means equal to plus 1. And I have f of x square minus x is 5. So I have these two functions for f, using which I want to find f of phi and f of 25. So what I thought when I was writing the test, let me put some value over here for x, which will at least take me close to phi. I was trying to find f of phi. So I put x as 3. So if I put x as 3, what do I get? I get f of 9 minus 3 is 5. So I get f of 6 is 5. So I thought if I got f of 6, let me think of getting f of 5. So I use this function. So f of 6 plus f of 5 has to be 1. So this I know is 5. So f of 5 will be minus 4. F of 5 will be minus 4. So we reached up till here finding f of 5 as minus 4. Now what about finding f of 25? So I thought if I have f of 6, I should also be able to find f of 7. So just thought process I just started, let's find, and thought maybe can I find a pattern or something. So f of 7 plus f of 6 is also 1. And obviously logically now look at this and look at this, I realize that f of 5 and f of 7 will be same, which means therefore f of 7 will also be minus 4. Therefore f of 8, again using the same property, will also come as 5. So I realized I didn't even go for 1, 2, 3, just realized that f of 5 was minus 4. Then the next value was 5, then minus 4, then 5, minus 4, then 5, and this process would keep continuing. So this was f of 5, f of 6, f of 7, f of 8, f of 9, and so on, which means all the odd values for x are giving minus 4, even values are giving me 5, which means f of 25 would also be minus 4. Let's use it over here. So I know f of 5 is how much? F of 5 is minus 4. So let's first use that. f of 5 is minus 4. So g of minus 4 plus f of 25 is what I want to find. G of x was x square, so this will become 16, and f of 25 was minus 4, so plus minus 4, answer becomes 12. Not easy. Important part was to realize this pattern. Once you realize this pattern, the question was obviously very, very simple. I would put it as a category C initially, because looking at the question, looking at two functions of f, people would not be able to find this. Anybody who realized this would have found the question easy. Let's have a look at the next question. The next question is based on logs. I would not say a very easy question. They have told us that find the number of distinct integral values of n which satisfy this particular inequality. So there is logarithm, there is inequality, it's a theta question. Obviously, it does not look very appealing. Let's try and simplify the polynomial, I mean the term which we have, the function which we have. So I can write this as 4 minus log n upon log 2 using the change of base property, divided by 3 minus log n upon log 4, right? So log 4 we know can be written as 2 log 2, right? That's right. So what do we have now? Now, if I take LCM, what will I get? I'll get 4 log 2 minus log n upon log 2 divided by 3 log 4 minus log n upon 2 log 2. So we've got the log 2 cut out, right? Now, simplify this as far as possible. What will we get? We'll get this 2 will have to go on the top. So we'll get 2 into log 16 minus log n upon 3 log 4, that is log 64 minus log n is less than 0. So this is where I have got it in the simplified form. I could have gone ahead further also opening the bracket 2, but I thought that was not necessary because 2 is a positive value. So that's not going to cause the less than 0. Now, when I have a upon b is less than 0, when is that possible? If one is greater than 0 and the other is less than 0, that's the only case it is possible. So trying both the cases, if I take the first case where this is greater than 0 and this is less than 0, what would happen? So as I said, the 2 will not really hamper the question, so leave that as it is. Log 16 minus log n is greater than 0. So I've got log 16 is greater than log n. So n is less than 16 in that case I will get. N is less than 16, and which means I have taken this greater than 0 and this less than 0. So if I solve that for less than 0, I'll get n greater than 64. Now if you think properly, this is not possible. How can n be less than 16 and greater than 64? That is not possible at all. So let's take the other case completely. Log 16 minus log n is less than 0. So log 16 is less than log n. So n is greater than 16. Solve the other one, you will get n is less than 64. This is definitely possible. So a value greater than 16 and less than 64. We are looking for integral values over here. So we are talking about values from 17 to 63, right? Talking about values from 17 to 63, including both of them, which will give me 47 values. Okay, definitely a category C, because first of all, one case we have to solve, leave that case out. Then the other case, get a theta answer like 47, not like a normal theta answer which are 1, 2 or something like that. So a pretty complicated question. Even the log part of it was not very easy. I would definitely put this as a category C question. Let's have a look at the next question. The next question tells us let f of x be a quadratic polynomial x such that f of x is greater than or equal to 0 for all real numbers x. They have told f of 2 is 0. Now, quadratic polynomial, we need to understand the graph of a quadratic polynomial. This is 1, this is 2. If f of 2 is 0, which means the graph is something like this, right? It does not have to be so spread out. It could be a little bit anyways, that's okay. But f of 2 is 0. At x is 2, y is 0. And they have told f of 4 is 6. So at 4 it is 6. We know that the graph will be symmetric at 2. We know the graph will be symmetric at 2. So if f of 4 is 6, then f of 0 will also be 6. F of 0 will also be 6. So basically what I have done is I have added one more data to the question. They have told us f of 2 and f of 4. They've asked for f of minus 2, but I have found f of 0 is also 6. F of minus 2 will keep going higher, so it will definitely be more than 6. So fourth option is not my answer anyways. That is very clear. Let's try. So I'm just going to erase this so we have some space. So what do we have? We have f of 2 is 0, f of 4 is 6, and I have f of 0 is also 6. Now let the quadratic function be f of x is equal to ax square plus bx plus c, right? That's your quadratic polynomial. Now initially what do I know? I know that if I use this one, taking x as 0, I should get answer as 6. So 6 is equal to 0 plus 0 plus c, so c is 6. So my first thing which I got, c is 6. Now let's use these two. F of 2 is 0. So f of 2 is 0. So 0 is equal to 4a plus 2b plus 6. So I've got minus 6 is equal to 4a plus 2b. Minus 3 is equal to 2a plus b. So we have got that. We will also look at what we want to find f of minus 2, but that I will find after I find the values of a and b. So I've got minus 3 is equal to 2a plus b. So I have used f of 2 is 0. Now I have to use f of 4 is 6. So I'll get 6 is equal to f of 4. So 16a plus 4b plus 6, 6 cut. So I get 16a plus 4b is 0. Divide by 4. So I get 4a is equal to minus b. We've got 4a is equal to minus b. Now take both these equations and solve them to find the values of a, b, c, and we'll get the function, and then we can find f of 2. We can also find f of 2 first, f of minus 2 first. So what is f of minus 2? F of minus 2 would be how much? It will be 4a minus 2b plus c. Plus c is 6, we know that. So what is minus b? Minus b is 4a. So minus 2b. Minus 2b will become how much? It will become 8a. So 4a plus 8a plus 6, that will be 12a plus 6 is what I want to find. Let's continue further. We have this equation, so let's find a. We have minus 3 is equal to 2a plus b can be written as minus 4a. So minus 3 is equal to minus 2a. A is 3 by 2. Put that over here, value. So f of 12a plus 6 will be 12 into 3 by 2 plus 6. That will be 18 plus 6, 24, which is the first option. Slightly longer, again definitely not an easy question, maybe a B or even a C for most students, because looking at functions and all, students normally get nervous. But important point was getting this part. Once you got this part which gave you the value of C, then it became more of a simultaneous equation question, not really very difficult. Let's have a look at one more approach for this question. This is an approach which you would understand if you understood that the second difference is constant in a quadratic equation. So we've been already told that it's a quadratic polynomial. And a quadratic polynomial, always the second difference is constant. Now let me explain that to you first. Now what do we know? We know that f of 2 is 0 and f of 4 is 6, right? So for 2 the value is 0 and for 4 the value is 6, right? These are the values we know. So obviously what we figured out earlier will still be used, that for 0 the value will be 6 again. Now let's start finding the difference. Now consider this as one series, right? Obviously we want to find the value for minus 2, so this is the value we want to find. Okay, now so the difference over here is 6 minus 0 is 6, 0 minus 6 is minus 6. This is not constant. So the difference over here will be 6 minus minus 6, which is 12, which is the constant difference. Now that is the whole idea. This difference should remain 12 every single time. So whatever value, suppose if I take this value as x, which I want to find. Now, so this will be x minus 6, right? And the difference between these two should be 12. So according to what we know, it should be x minus 6 minus 6 should be 12, and therefore x will be 24. This is a much shorter method to do the question. Obviously, you still had to figure out that for 0 the value was 6. But if you understand this approach, that the second difference has to be constant in the quadratic equation, then this method will be really very quick. Let's have a look at the next question. The next question is again one more theta question. the average of a non-decreasing sequence of n, where A1, A2, A3, up till An is 300. So there are, we don't know how many numbers. There could be where they have said, they haven't said anything. So n could be 1, it could be 2, whatever. Okay, but since it's a sequence, I'm assuming maybe n is 2. So there is A1, A2, minimum 2, I mean, up till An, the average is 300. So if you think logically, what is 300? It is sum of all these multiplied by n is 300. Now they are saying if I replace A1 with 6A1 and leave everything else as it is, then the average becomes 400. So here the average was 300 of n numbers. So can I say the total was 300n and here the total was 400n. So why is there a difference in the total? Because A1 has been replaced with 6A1. So the difference between these two series, everything else will cut out. We'll have only 5A1 will be equal to 400n minus 300n, which is 100n. And I would get A1 is equal to 20n. Now we got up till here. Now think logically, what have they asked? Number of possible values of A1. Now, can A1 be 1? Means can n be 1 over here? If n is 1, we know that A1 is 20. Then there is only one term. Then the average was never 200. Right? It can never be, average was never 300. Initially they had said average was 300. So n can be 2. And I will explain with an example. Obviously in an exam situation you should not do that. N can be 2. What will happen if n was 2? What is my first term? A1 would become 40 and the next term would be 560. Their total was 600, 2 terms, and the average was 300. If this is replaced with 6A1, so this is replaced with 240 and this becomes 560, new total becomes 800 and the average becomes 400. So we are right. If it was 3, so the first term would be 60. The total of the 3 terms would be 900. Now the other terms, 2 terms could be anything, doesn't matter. Their 2 ka total should come out to be whatever 840. So the total of 3 terms is 900 and then this will become 360. So that will keep continuing. So what is the largest value my A1 can take? It's a non-decreasing sequence, which means the largest value A1 can take is 300. So n can be 2, n can be 3, up till n can be 15. Because when n is 15, A1 will become 300. Now if n is 15, that means there are 15 terms, all of them being 300, 300, 300. And their average is also 315 terms. If this was replaced with 6 times, you can notice that the average of all of them will become 400. And hence n can take all values from 2 to 15, which means n will have, A1 will have 14 values because they've asked for A1 ka values. So A1 will be 20 times n. So it can be 20 to the 40, 23 to the 60, 24 to the 80 and so on. It can take 14 values. One more definitely category C question. Understanding this was a little bit difficult, not very easy to understand. Let's have a look at the next question. Now after looking at a lot of questions in line of either functions and one of sequences and one of averages also, which was not difficult, it is a relief to see a pretty straightforward sum of interest. And that's what exactly happened on the day of the cat also. You looked at 5-6 questions and thought, oh wow, suddenly the cat has got very difficult. Then you see a very simple question on interest. Mr. Pinto invests 1/5 of his capital at 6%, 1/3 at 10% and the remaining at 1%. So 1/5 and 1/3 was there and percentage was there. So I simply started with the total of 1500. That's the way I thought of it in the exam. 1/5 of that was 300, 1/3 was 500 and the balance was 700. Now, the first one was at 6%, the next was at 10% and this was at 1%. Now, then the minimum number of years required for the cumulative interest for these investment to equal or exceed his initial capital is how much? Remember his initial capital is 1500. Let's find out what is the interest earned in 1 year. So 6% of 300 would be 18 rupees, 10% of 500 would be 50 rupees and 1% of 700 would be 7 rupees, which means in 1 year we will earn 75 rupees. Now, I want the interest to become minimum equal to the principal. Principal is 1500. So 75 multiplied by how many years is 1500? Clearly the answer was 20, and that's my answer. A quick category A question. Should mark an answer to this very quickly and move ahead. Answer is 20 years. Let's have a look at the next question. The next question tells us that A and B are non-negative real numbers. So there are non-negative real numbers where A plus 2B is equal to 6. What is the average of the maximum and minimum possible value of A plus B? Now, so if they are non-negative numbers, which means the minimum value they can take is 0. So, if I make my column for A and B, A plus 2B is 6. So, if I take A as 0, B will be 6. B will be 3, I mean. If A is 0, B will be 3. So, my A plus B will become 3. Now, if you take any value, now first thing you can take decimal values also because they are speaking about real numbers. So, if I take A as 1, we know that 2B will be 5 and B can be 2.5. But my point is that it will not matter because what will happen, A plus B will keep increasing from here now. In fact, now it will keep increasing. If you take A as 2, 2B will be 4, so B will be 2. So A plus B is 4. When will I get the largest value? So now no point taking decimal values and thinking about them. The largest value will be when B will be 0. When B is 0, A will be 6 and A plus B will be 6. So the maximum value for A plus B is turning out to be 6 and the minimum value for A plus B is turning out to be 3. And what have they asked us for? The average of the maximum and minimum. So average of these two will be 9 divided by 2, which will be 4.5, which is the third option. So even though whether you figured out the decimal part, in fact, I'll just give a disclosure that in the test, this was my slot. I had not really read the term real numbers well, and I thought they were talking about integers, and I didn't think of the decimals. So I just solved it with this logic that the minimum value will be 3 and the maximum value for A plus B will be 6. Decimals will not change anything over here, and hence the average was 4.5, which is the third option. Let's have a look at the next question. The next question is a pretty standard question on averages. Very, very straightforward question. Manu earns rupees 4,000 per month and wants to save an average of rupees 550 per month a year. So he wants to do an average saving of 550 per month. If you want, you can multiply 550 into 12 and find out how much he wants to save and all. But I don't prefer doing that. So just let's hold on there. In the first 9 months, that is from Jan to September, his expenses is 3,500. He's earning 4,000 and his expenses is 3,500. So per month, his saving is only 500. Understand, we knew that he wanted to save 550 every month, right? So right now he's saving only 500, which means his shortfall for those 9 months is 50 into 9. We just leave that as it is. 50 into 9, if you want, it's a simple calculation, you can finish it off. 450 rupees is the shortfall right now. So that he will have to make up somewhere or the other. And he foresees that the 10th month onwards, his monthly expenses will increase to 3,700. So October to December, his expenses are 3,700. In order to meet his yearly saving target, which was this amount, what should be his earning in rupees from the 10th month onwards? So they have given us a choice that we can increase his earning. So let's understand how much he wants to save for, how much he has to earn for those 3 months. Now he has to still save 550 per month over here, because every month he has to save 550. So 550 into 3, so he has to definitely earn extra. Plus he has to also earn the 450 which is there. 450 over 3 months. So per month he will have to earn 150 extra. So every month above his spending, which is 3,700 rupees, he will have to earn 700 extra. Let's understand this once more. See, 3,700 is his expense. 550 he wants to save anyways, and 150 is the shortfall saving which he has to save. So he has to earn a total of 4,400, which is the third option. You could do the bigger calculation, multiply these numbers, get the total saving and work backwards. Whichever ways, I thought it was a very, very simple question. Definitely category A. Let's have a look at the next question. The next question talks about consider an arithmetic progression which is 3, 7, 11 standard arithmetic progression where first term is 3, common difference is 4. and let an denote the sum of the first n terms. Instead of Sn, they are using an. That's okay, regular terms. Then the value of 1 upon 25 summation an for n is 1 to 25. Now this is where the question got difficult. First, let us find the function for an. Sn ka formula is n upon 2 bracket 2a plus n minus 1 into d. Right? I'm not finding a25 because that's not what they've asked me. I'm just finding an. So n upon 2, 2a would be 6 plus n minus 1 into 4. So that's n upon 2 into 4n minus 4 plus 6. So it will be 4n plus 2. You can take 2 common and the 2 will cut out. So it will be n into 2n plus 1. So you are left with n into 2n plus 1, which if you simplify further one step, it's 2n square plus n. We want summation of this for 21st 25 terms. You need to know your summation properties for n is equal to 1 to 25 for 2n square plus n. Now this is where I thought the question was difficult, because summation of 1 square plus 2 square plus 3 square plus 25. So we need the formula for square. The summation is n into n plus 1 into 2n plus 1 upon 6 plus summation for only n, that is first 25 terms, will be n into n plus 1 upon 2. Now put n as 25, and remember there's also 1 upon 25 outside, so let's use that also. So 1 upon 25 into this. So we are left with 1 upon 25. This 2 will cut here, this will become 3. 25 into 26 into 51 upon 3 plus 25 into 26 upon 2. This 3 cuts here 17 times, 2 cuts here 13 times. 25 will cut out both the times. So 25 common and it will cut out same thing. So we are left with 26 into 17 plus 13. So let's multiply 17 6 is 102, 10 carry. 17 is 34 plus 10 is 44. 442 plus 13 is 455, which is the third option. So that was one approach to do this question. I'm sure a lot of students don't remember this. They haven't practiced this enough. So this is one approach to do the sum. Let me try and explain one more approach to do this question. Not that the other approach really makes the sum very easy, but still some little bit other method can be used. So the series was 3, 7, 11, dash, dash, dash. So what was the summation series? The series which we are actually looking for, the sum whose. So we are looking at 1 upon 25 of 3 plus 10. The second term is 3 plus 7, 10. The third term is 10 plus 20, 11, 21. The next term would have been 15, right? So the next term would be 36 in this series, and so on, so on. 25 such terms, and we need their sum. Now, let's try and break this series up. We have done this. I have explained this in a lot of places earlier also. So let's just try and get this 3, 10, 21, 36. This is a second order series where obviously the difference is 7, 11, 15 and so on, and the difference is 4, 4. Now, because this difference is 4, or what we got earlier, our summation was 2n square plus n. From whichever place, either from this 4 or from 2n square plus n, you need to figure out a method for this series. So for example, you can write 3 as 2 into 0 square plus 3. Pay attention carefully, 2 into 0 square plus 3. The next one can be written as 2 into 1 square plus 8. The third term can be written as 2 into 2 square plus, that will be 8 plus 13. And if you notice what is happening, this 3, 8, 13 is becoming a AP, 0, 1, 2 is becoming a AP. The next term, just to check further for 36, it can be written as 2 into 3 square plus 18. Yes, it is still working, and so on. So this 1 upon 25 remains as it is. We've got a 2 into 0 square plus 1 square up till 24 square. Right, 2 into 1, because first term is 0 square, so 25 terms, the last term will be 24 square, plus the next series will be 3 plus 8 plus 13 dash 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 up to 25 terms. Right, now This part should be pretty straightforward. 1 upon 25, 2 into n plus 1 into 2n plus 1 upon 6. So n is 24 into n plus 1 is 25 into 2n plus 1 is 49 upon 6 plus this is a regular summation term. So it will be, regular summation will be n upon 2, that will be 25 upon 2 into 2a will be 6 plus n minus 1 will be 24 into d will be 5. Let's try and solve this. 25 will cut in both the places. Over here also this 25 will cut and here also it will cut because the 25 was outside common. 6 4s are 24. So we are left with 8 into 49. This is 120 plus 6, 126 divided by 2. 126 divided by 2 is 63. So we've got a 49 8s plus 63. What will be 49 8s? That will be 400 minus 8. 392 plus 63, which comes out to be 455. Whichever way you use, answer is 455. But whichever way you've done this question, I think the question was difficult. I would again put this as a category C. Let's have a look at the next question. The next question is a very straightforward question from permutation combination. The number of integers greater than 2000 that can be formed with the digits 0, 1, 2, 3, 5 using each digit at most 1. So we can use each digit maximum 1 time. Now these are 6 digits, right? Now pay attention very carefully. We have 6 digits. We have to use each digit maximum 1, so we can't repeat the digits. And the number of digits that can be formed with the digits, so we can form. Now I can have a 4-digit number, I can have 5-digit numbers, and I can have 6-digit numbers. So let's first work with 4-digit numbers. Now my 4-digit numbers can start with 2, 3, 4 or 5, because I can't start with 1, because if it is starting with 1, it will not be greater than 2000. So my 4-digit number can start with 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have 4 choices. My next digit can be any digit, no worries over there. So I have obviously whatever I've used up, I can't use that. So I'll have 5 choices, then 4 choices, and then 3 choices. That will be 5 for the 20, 20, 12 are 240. So I'll have 244 digit numbers which are greater than 2000. Now 5-digit number, I don't have to worry about whether it will be greater than 2000 or not. Obviously it will always be greater than 2000. So let's look at 5-digit numbers. My first digit can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It cannot be 0 obviously, so it can be any 5 over here. Then out of 6 I have used up 1, so I can have the remaining 5. Then 4, then 3, and then 2. That will be 25 for the 100, 100, 6 are 600. And 6-digit numbers will be more or less the same thing. I'll have the same 600. First digit can be 5 because you cannot start with 0. Second digit will be 5, then 4, then 3 into 2 into 1. So I'll have 600 more numbers with 6-digit numbers which will all be obviously greater than 2000. Hence my total answer will be 1440, which is the second option. Pretty straightforward question. Even though it was permutation combination, you should have got this. Just because it is PNC, some of you all might find it category B, but I would put this as a category A. Let's look at the next question. The next question talks about a particular cubic equation where they have said R and C are real numbers. If R and minus R are the 2 roots of this cubic equation, then what does C equal to? So there are, the first 2 roots are already R and minus R. Let's put the third root as K. Just any random. I could have taken alpha, beta, gamma, so I could have taken gamma. I've just taken K. So I've got the first root as R, second root as minus R, and third root as K. I have a couple of approaches. I'll talk about the approach which I used in the test. At that time, I did not think of the best approach maybe, and I used one of the approach. I first put X as R. When I say the root is R, which means the value of one of the values possible for X is R. So I got this equation. I got 5R cube plus CR square minus 10R plus 9 is 0. Then I put X as minus R. So I got negative 5R cube plus CR square plus 10R plus 9 is again equal to 0. So we got that. If I added these 2 equations as it is, I would have C and R square both, which I don't want. I basically wanted to get rid of C and R square, so I could find R. So I, instead of adding them, subtracted them. So when I subtracted them, this became 10r cube. This cuts out, 9 and minus 9 cuts out. Minus 20r is equal to 0. 10r cube is equal to 20r. R cannot be 0. So I can cut r on both sides. So 10r square is equal, or I can cut the 0 also. So r square is equal to 2. So r is plus or minus root 2. So the two values which we have, the two roots which we have, one of them is root 2 and the other is minus root 2. Third is still k, which means by putting root 2 in the question, it should satisfy. So 5 into root 2 cube, that will become 2 root 2, plus c into root 2 square, that will be 2c, minus 10 into root 2 is minus 10 root 2, plus 9 is 0. This is 10 root 2 minus 10 root 2 cuts out. So 2c is minus 9 and c is negative 9 upon 2, which is the second option. And this is the approach which I remember using in the exam. Obviously, I think now it turned out too long. There were a couple of easier approaches than this. Let's talk about them. Looking at one more approach, I thought let's use the sum of the roots property. What is sum of the roots? Alpha plus beta plus gamma is minus b by a. Now, one root is r, the other root was minus r. Third root I told you was I've taken as k, is minus b by a, that is minus c by 5. So r and minus r cuts out, so k is minus c by 5. So one of the roots of the equation is minus c by 5. That means instead of x, if I put minus c by 5, it should satisfy the equation. So 5 into minus c by 5, the whole cube, that will become negative c cube upon 125, plus c into negative c upon 5, the whole square, that will become c square upon 25, minus 10 into minus c upon 5, plus 9 is 0. Now if you notice, these two will cut out because this is 525s, this is negative c cube upon 25 and this is positive c cube upon 25. So this cuts out with this. We are left with 5 1s, 5 2s cuts out. So we are left with 2c plus 9 is 0. So 2c is minus 9. C is negative 9 upon 2. That was the second approach for this question by using sum of the roots property. We could have used one more way of finding it, using two roots at a time property. What was that property? Alpha beta plus alpha gamma plus beta gamma is c upon a, right? So r into minus r plus r into k plus minus r into k is c upon a. What is c upon a? C in this case is minus 10 upon a is 5. So this is negative r square plus rk minus rk is negative 2, rk cut. So we've got r square is 2, r is positive or minus root 2. And then the third method will follow the same approach which we followed in the second method. Put root 2 back over here, or again put root 2 over here. You have the value, you can put root 2 over here, you'll find k. But that doesn't help you, you want c anyways. So just put it over here, you'll get the value of c. Whichever way you do it, I don't think so it was a category A, but definitely was not a category C also. I could put this as a category B. Let's have a look at the next question. Next question on geometry. Not a very difficult question from geometry. Should have got it. Equilateral triangles are very, very popular, questions because they're normally very straightforward. The length of each side of an equilateral triangle ABC is 3. So as I'm reading the question, this is what I would do in the exam situation. I would start drawing the diagram. ABC is 3, all are 3, 3, 3. Let D be a point on BC such that the area of triangle ADC is half of area of triangle ABD. So basically, this point D is such that this area is 1 and this area is 2. So this point also will be in similar logic. This distance will be 2 and this distance will be 1. Anyway, luckily this was 3. So which means BD will be 2 and DC will be 1. Right? So DC will be half of BD because the area of triangle ADC is half of ABD. They both have the same height. Then the length of AD is how much? So we will draw the actual height of the equilateral triangle. Let's draw the actual height. That will be perpendicular. So let's call this point as E. AE is the height. So how much will be BE? BE will be 1.5. So ED will be 0.5. So obviously I'm going to use Pythagoras in triangle AED and that's my whole purpose. So I've got ED as 0.5, you want to call it half, you can call it half. AE you can find using the property of a equilateral triangle. Height of a equilateral triangle is root 3 upon 2 into side. So that's 3 root 3 upon 2. And now just use Pythagoras theorem. AD square is AE square, square of this. That will be 27 upon 4 plus 1 upon 4, which is 28 upon 4, which is 7. So AD square is 7. So AD is root 7. Definitely could have done something like this. Not very difficult. Easily possible to do this. Answer is the second option. Let's have a look at the next question. The next question looks like a straightforward question from ratios. Let's read it. In an election, there were 4 candidates and 80% of the registered voters casted their votes. That means out of all the people who wanted to vote or who were available for vote, 80% only have given their votes. One of the candidates received 30% of the casted votes, and the other 3 received the remaining casted votes in the ratio 1:2:3. So, if 100 people were supposed to vote, then the number of registered voters, so this 100 is what I'm assuming the number of registered voters to be 100, or you want to call it 100x, it's okay. Only 80x came for voting. Out of this 30%, so 24x votes have been got by one of the candidates. Okay. So now the remaining 56x, right? That will be 56x. Yeah, not making error. Were divided in the ratio between 1, 2, 3 between the others. So that will be 6 parts. 56 does not go in 6. It will give me a fraction. So either I can continue with fractions, or I can take that much extra trouble of multiplying this by 6 immediately. Multiply this by 6. So this also will get multiplied by 6, and this also gets multiplied by 6. That's the only change you have to make. When you get stuck with fractions, whatever fraction you're going to get, just multiply that much in the start. So we are starting with 600x that way. So 56x into 6 is the number of voters left that have been divided in the ratio 1:2:3. Now let's read the question further. If the winner of the election received 2512 votes more than the second highest voter. So let's see how much does the highest person receive. 3/6, that's half. Actually, I don't even think we needed this, even though it was, the 6 was not needed. Now I'm realizing, let me explain to you why. Because if I'm going to do 3/6, which is half of 56x, this person has got 28x. So if 3 parts is 28x, 2 parts is going to be definitely lower than 24x. So this is the winner, and this person is the second person. So this is, what you do in the exam. You realize now you don't need the 6, so I just removed it. 28x and the second person is 24x. Difference between them was given as 2512. So 4x is 2512. So x is equal to 4, 4 6s are 24, 4 2s are 8, and 4 8s are 32, 628. And hence 100x will be 62800, which will be the second option. Very much doable, definitely a category A. Started with 100x, got it very easily. I know some of you all might have wasted some time even calculating 1/6 of 56x and got some fractions and confused yourself, but that was not needed really. Let's have a look at the next question. The next question is from polygons. Regular polygon A and B have the number of sides in the ratio 1:2. So there are 2 regular polygons whose sides are in the ratio 1:2, and their interior angles are in the ratio 3:4. So let's remember the formula for an interior angle of a polygon. So interior angle formula is 180 minus 360 upon n, right? 360 upon n is always the exterior angle. 180 minus 360 upon n, which can be written as 180 common n minus 2 upon n. You can write it this way also. So this is the formula for interior angle of a regular polygon. So if I take for the smaller polygon, the lesser number of sides, if I take the angle, the side as n, and for the larger one I'll take 2n. And they have said the angles are in the ratio 3:4. So let's put that down. 180 into n minus 2 upon n divided by 180 into 2n minus 2 upon 2n is 3/4 is what they've given, and they want to find the number of sides of B. That means they want to find 2n. So this n and n cuts out, 180 cuts out. Let's continue. Let's take this 2 on the top. So we'll get 2n minus 4, or we can actually cut the 2 out over here. 2 cuts out over here. So this will be left with only n minus 1. Now cross multiply. So what have we got? We've got 4n minus 8 is equal to 3n minus 3. that will be n is equal to 5. They haven't asked for n, it's a theta question, please be careful. They've asked for 2n, 2n was 10, and that's your answer. Number of sides were 10 for the polygon they're looking for. Very, very, very straightforward question, definitely a category A. Let's have a look at the next question. The next question, even though it's a slightly long question to read, it's a straightforward question from mixtures. I thought you could easily do this question. Now, there are two containers of the same volume. First container is half filled with sugar and the second container is half filled with milk. Half the container of the first container is transferred to the second container, and then half of this mixture is transferred back to the first container. Next, half the container of the first container is transferred back to the second container. Then what is the ratio of sugar syrup and milk in the second container? Fine, a lot of things given. Let's read it carefully and let's try it. Let's start with the random container 1 and container 2. Initially over here, container 1 has only sugar syrup. Let's take any random number, say 200 ml, and over here milk is also 200 ml. Obviously they don't have, this container does not have any milk and this container does not have any sugar. This was initial. What happens after the first transfer? In the first transfer, half from C1, right? Half of the first container is put in the second container. So over here sugar will be 100, milk will still remain 0. Over here milk will remain 200 and sugar will become 100 because 100 sugar syrup has come here. So that is what was done after first. Now half of the second container is put in the first container. So over here sugar will 50 will go over there. So sugar will become 150 and milk 100 will go there. So milk will become 100, right? While over here milk will remain 100 and sugar will become only 50. You can keep checking the total. The total should be 400. So this is 250, 250 plus 150, 400. So 2 times it is done. Process has to be done one more time, third time. Again half is going. So 150 ka half will go, 75 will go. Milk 100 ka half will go, 50 will go. Now what will be left over here? Again logically, initially there was 200 sugar. So if only 75 is left over here, what will be left? 125 will be milk, sugar will be left, and same way milk 150 will be left. Read carefully about what they've asked. They've asked the ratio of the sugar syrup and milk in the second container. So 125 upon 150, that will be 25 5s are 25 6s are, answer is 5:6. I have exactly discussed the approach which I thought which was suitable in the exam. So I have done that. Maybe there can be a better way to do it, simpler values or whatever. But I thought this was a straightforward way you can do the exam. Don't start, people have a habit of actually wasting a lot of time about thinking of the best methods then rather than just starting. This would take hardly any time to do. Let's have a look at the next question. Again, a pretty straightforward question from time and work. Working alone, the time taken by A, T and M to complete any job is in the ratio of 5:8:10. So time taken by 3 people, A, T, M, is in the ratio of 5:8:10. Even without reading further, I thought let me get this into efficiency. What will be the efficiency of A, T and M? LCM of these numbers is 40. 40 divided by 5 is 8. 40 divided by 8 is 5. 40 divided by 10 is 4. So these are their efficiency. So if A can do 8 unit of work, T can do 5 unit of work and M can do 4 unit of work at the same time, right? Let's continue. They accept a job which they can finish in 4 days if all of them work for 8 hours per day. So what is my total job? If all of them are working 8 plus 5, 13, 13 plus 4, 17. 17 into 8 hours every day into 4 days. So this is my total job, 17 into 32, right? Let's just go through that again. 4 days working 8 hours a day. Fine. So this is the total job. However, A and T work together for the first 6 days, working 6 hours 40 minutes. What is 40 minutes? It is 2/3 of an hour. So 6 hours 40 minutes is 6 2/3, which is 20 upon 3 hours. So initially only A and T are working. A and T means 8 plus 5, 13. 13 into 20 upon 3 into 6 days. So much work they have already finished. The remaining work has to be done by M. The question asked is find the number of hours that M will take to complete the job. So whatever work will be remaining, that divided by 4 will give me the number of hours, right? So you can call it as 4M if you want, and you have to find M now. So let's solve this. 3 1s are, 3 2s are. This calculation was slightly difficult. 17 into 4 is 68, 68 into 8. 8 8s are 64, 6 carry, 8 6 are 48, 48 plus 6 is 54. So 544 minus 13 to the 26, 26 to the 50, 520. So I am left with 24 units. 24 units is equal to 4m, and therefore m will take 6 hours. So 6 hours of m will be needed. That is your final answer. Again, definitely a question in a paper like CAT, when you practice enough of time and work, this is definitely a category A. Let's have a look at the next question. The next question, initially when I also saw it, I found it a little bit difficult, but then spending some time over it, realized that it was not very, very difficult. Yes, from a student perspective, definitely a category B or even a category C. Let's think. For some natural number n, 15,000 factorial divided by n factorial factorial. What is the largest possible value of n? And there were options. So what I thought was, just let's put n as 7 and check. So 15,000 factorial is 15,000 in 14,999, 14,998, and so on till 1, where each and every number will come. If I put n as 7, so 7 factorial I know is 5040. 5040 factorial is 5040 into 5039 into 5038, and so on. I just have to worry, will this whole thing cut over here? Obviously it will cut, na? Think logically, 5040 somewhere will come here, and from there everything will cut. So I don't have to worry about that only, right? So this will definitely cut. Now, I don't have to worry now because the examiner has not given 8. Now, if the examiner had made an 8 also as an option, that would be a problem for me. Just to explain it to you, if what would happen, 8 factorial was there. 8 factorial we know will be 40,000 something something, and hence that will not cut over here, and hence the largest value is 7. This would have been a very difficult question if it was a theta question. Obviously, once you understood the method and all that, maybe it can be worked upon, but otherwise I thought it would be a difficult question. Let's have a look at the next question. The next question is a classic question in terms of how do you read the question. You know, whether have you read the question well, have you interpreted the question well. It was such a straightforward question if you interpret it, and difficult question if you don't interpret it. On day 1, there are 100 particles in a laboratory. So day 1, there are 100 particles. On day n, where n is greater than or equal to 2, 1 out of every n particle produces another particle. So let's read this part carefully. 1 out of every n particle. So on day 2, 1 out of 2 will produce 1 extra. What is 1 out of 2? Half. That means out of these 100, half of them will produce extra, which means 50 of them will remain as it is, and the remaining 50 will produce 1 extra. So the total will become 150 on day 2. What will happen on day 3? That means there's an addition of 50. On day 3, 1 out of 3 will do the same work. So 1 out of 3 will do the same work. 150 ka 1/3 is 50. So only those 50 will produce. So actually they will again become 200. So on day 3, the addition is 50. So 200 became. Day 4, 1 out of 4 will do that. So again 50, it will become 250. And you realize it's a simple AP of an addition of 50. Now what are they asking? When will the number of particle increases 2000? So which day will it become 1000? So when is Tn 1000? We know Tn is A plus, obviously you can do it orally also, but Tn is A plus n minus 1 into D. So 1000 is equal to A is 100, n we don't know, n is what we want to find, n minus D into 50. 1000 minus 100 is 900, 900 is 50 into n minus 1. 50 will go in 900 18 times, so 18 is n minus 1, therefore n is 19, which is the second option. Important part was to read that part very, very carefully, that 1 out of n. Once you understood that, that was a straightforward question. Maybe a or a B. B maybe just because you have not understood the language well of the question. Let's have a look at the next question. Question from averages, not very straightforward, but not very difficult. 5 students, including Amit, appear for an examination in which possible marks are integers between 0 and 50, both inclusive. The average marks for all the students is 38. So the average is 38. Because it is only 5, I just did my calculation for total also. Total is 190. The average marks for all the students 38, and exactly 3 students got more than 32. So 5 were there, where 3 of them have got more than 32, right? If no 2 students get the same score, that means everybody gets a different score, and Amit got the least score. So this is definitely Amit among the 5 students, and the difference between the highest and the lowest possible marks for Amit is how much? So what is the highest Amit can get and what is the lowest Amit can get, and we need to find the difference between that. So I can't use options, right? So what is the lowest Amit can get? When Amit, I want him to get the lowest, these 3 I'll make them as high as possible. So the best person can get 50, the second best person can get 49, third best person can get 48. So the total of these 3 will become 147. So out of the required 190, 147 is already done, which means how much is left? 43 more is there. Let's call this guy as B. So A plus B still need 43. Now, if I want to minimize A, if I want to make minimum A minimum, B has to be as large as possible. What is the largest value B can take? I'm sure a lot of people made a mistake over here. Would have taken B as 31. B can take 32 because they said 3 people got more than 32. So B can get 32. If B can get 32, therefore A can get 11, and that is the smallest value A can get. Now think of the largest value A can get, and this was where you can really do it smartly. B we still know can get 32, which means the largest value A can get is 31. This lands up only to 63. The remaining 3 can easily reach 190 because 190 minus 63 is 127. I can easily score a 127 between 3 of them because I have scope till 147 in fact. So you can just give them 40, 40 or something else. So it can be easily 40, 41 and 46, 127. There could be so many other possibilities. It doesn't have to be this possibility, but it is possible. So the highest value A can take is 31. The lowest value A can take is 11. Difference between that will be 20. Second option, not a category A, but definitely category B, not category C also. A lot of students would not realize of this highest value, lowest value so easily, and that's the reason I'm not put it as a category A. Let's have a look at the next question. I'm sure a lot of students just left this question looking at the options of sine theta, cos theta, just left the question in the exam. Well, for your bad luck, it wasn't very difficult. Let's pay attention why. What have they told us? In a triangle ABC, the altitudes are there, 2 altitudes are there. Angle BAC is 45 and angle ABC is theta, and we want to find the ratio of the altitudes. Let's draw the diagram. So first I decided to take this angle as 45. So which angle was 45? BAC was 45 and BE was one of the altitudes. So if this is the altitude, I didn't purposely draw the other altitude. Just leave it over here. So this is 45, this is 90, so this has to be 45. So then I thought, because anyway the final answer asked is a ratio, let me just take a value. Let me take BE as 1, so AE is also 1. So using Pythagoras or using 45, 45, 90, I know BA is root 2. Left it over there. So I've got 1, 1 and root 2. Now I do the other altitude. So what is the other altitude? Let's just change the color. The other altitude was AD. So this was AD. And this angle was given as theta. Now I don't need the 45. This angle is given theta. Look at this triangle ABD. Just concentrate on triangle ABD. What is sine theta? Because I want AD. So I have BA. So I'm using sine. Why am I not using cos? Because I don't have BD ka value. Sine is opposite upon hypotenuse. So sine theta would be AD upon root 2. So AD is root 2 sine theta. They want us to find AD upon BE. AD we know is root 2 sine theta, and BE so we had taken as 1. Because it was a ratio, I can take at least one of the values. I got root 2 sine theta. You had taken any other value instead of 1 also, you would have still got it. You could have left it as a variable. Don't prefer using variables when you can use values. So AD upon BE is root 2 sine theta upon 1, first option. Not easy, but not very difficult. You know, you have to realize that you can't just leave a question because it has sine theta. Everybody knew this much at least, that sine theta is opposite upon hypotenuse. Now just how we make use of that was the important point. Let's have a look at the next question. In an examination, there were 75 questions. 3 marks were awarded for each correct question. 1 were deducted for each wrong question, and 1 mark was awarded for unattempted question. Ryan scored a total of 97 marks in the examination. If the number of unattempted questions was higher than the number of attempted questions, then the maximum number of correct answers that Ryan could have got. Looks long, at least let me try and form the equation and see where we go. So total 75 questions were there. Let's assume he got A questions correct, B questions incorrect, and C questions he left alone. And this was 75. So A plus B plus C was 75. 3 marks he got for every correct question. So 3A marks he got that. 1 mark was deducted for every wrong question. So minus 1B. And 1 mark for unattempted questions. So plus 1C was 97. If the number of unattempted questions was higher than the number of attempted questions, that means if C was higher than A plus B. Now this was important. C was higher than A plus B. Then what is the maximum number of correct answers we can get? We want to maximize A. Now, the important point was just to understand that if I want to maximize A, I will have to minimize C. I'll have to keep C as far as small as possible. So, but C still has to be greater than A plus B, which means C has to be greater than half of this. Half of that is 37.5. So, the lowest value C can take is 38. And once I realize that, it's a simple question of simultaneous equation. Once C is 38, so A plus B is 37 and 3A minus B is whatever, this was 38, right? So 97 minus 38, 98 minus 38 is 60, 59, right? Add both the equations, so we get 4A is equal to 96. Luckily, I got a multiple of 4. If I wouldn't have got a multiple of 4, I would have to try other values of C. I would have to take C as 39, then 40, maybe I would have just have to keep trying. But luckily we get over here 4A is 96 and therefore A is 24, which is the answer for this question. Again, as I said, I thought definitely doable if you try it. Again, not a category A, it's not a sum which you look at and feel that wow, I'm just definitely going to get it. So it's not a category A, but a category B. Let's have a look at the next question. I thought one of the easiest questions on time, speed, distance I've seen in a long time. 2 ships meet at mid-ocean and then one ship goes south and the other ship goes west. So suppose if they meet over here, one ship goes west and the other ship goes south, obviously at an angle of 90 degrees. 2 hours later, they are 60 kilometers apart. So the hypotenuse is definitely 60. If the speed of the one of the ship is 6 kilometers per hour more than the other one, then find the, then the speed in kilometers per hour of the slower ship is what? So 2 hours later, suppose the speed of the slower ship is x, which I want to find. So this distance covered is 2x and this distance covered will be 2 into x plus 6, right? And 60. Now, if you've seen my videos and you've gone through my concept videos, everything, we've specified so many times that whenever you see a right angle triangle, try 3, 4, 5 ka multiples. This is 5 12s. So just check whether this is 3 12s, right? And this is 4 12s. Does it satisfy all the conditions or not? So if this is 36, does this come out to be 48? That means if x is, so this is 36, so x is 18, 18 plus 6 is 24, 24 2 is 48. Yes, it is. So simple terms mein my right angle triangle is, I'm just drawing it straight, it is 18, sorry not 18, it is 36, 48 and 60. They want us to find the speed of the slower ship. That means 2x is 36, so x is 18, 18 is the speed of the slower ship. One of the easiest questions I've seen in a long time. On the worst side, you could use Pythagoras theorem, 2x the whole square plus 2 into x plus 6 the whole square is equal to 60 square. Divide by 2 square, 4 everywhere and make the equation smaller, then use options. Whichever way you do it, I thought it was a straightforward question. You should have got this.